Okay, I'm going to call tonight's meeting of June 5th, 2019 of the Hatfield Planning Board to order. I'm going to introduce everyone very quickly. Wilma Davis, our AA at the far left, Steph Schlich to my immediate left, Paul Dostal, Michael Pasek, and I want to welcome our newest member, Jimmy Tarr, and congratulate him on his recent victory at the elections, recent town elections. And before we get started with the meeting, I would like to have Paul Labby stand up. Paul Labby retired from the board here recently, and we certainly appreciate his dedicated service to the board since 2014. In December of 2014, he joined the board to fill out the seat of the sadly departed Greg Winters. And Paul, it was we weren't sure if you were going to be on the board yet for this meeting, because we thought we might have a final hearing for the solar project, but that's going to be extended into our next meeting. So thank you very much for your service. If I can get a motion for resolution.
I'd like to make a resolution recognizing Mr. Paul Labby for his many years of service, not only to the planning board, but to the town of Hatfield, and we wish him many, many, many more years to service to the town of Hatfield. We'll see you around the campus, Paul.
Can I get a second to that motion? Okay, there's a second. Motion is on the table. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for coming out tonight. So we do have a hearing tonight, but we also have 3 approval not required. And I've asked the applicant and their attorney if it would be okay, and I hope it's okay with all of you that are here. I'm assuming that the rest of you are not here. If you do have questions about the A&Rs, that's fine, but I'm assuming that's not why you're here. I'd like to get those out of the way before we start the hearing so that these folks don't have to be here for the whole hearing unless they wish to be. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to start with Richie Corza. So Rich. We have the maps here, Wilma?
I left them with you?
No, I think they're there, right? Yeah. So if you can just explain this to everyone real quickly, Richie, I think we can deal with this one pretty quickly. Pass a couple down, Paul. We'll take Steph and I can look at this one.
All right. Where are we here?
Linseed Road.
All right. This is
That's your house.
that's my house. So this lot here,
Lot 1.
part of it's in Hatfield and the rest is in Untitled. I need an A&R because this is tied to this. So I'll remove this from here so I can sell that.
He has 100 feet of frontage. The road bends right here, so that's why you've got this funny line. It's not a corner, it's just a bend in the road.
All right.
And actually, the last 23 feet shares the boundary between the city and the town.
So we got the 200 feet.
Yeah, we have the 200 feet of frontage, and we have the necessary acreage. There's 3 acres, and this is outlying residential, which is 65,000 square feet. Can I, please, if you all want to talk amongst yourselves, you're going to have to do it in the hallway, okay? Please, So we're asking for an approval not required to do this, to subdivide off of this lot from what now is Richie's lot with his house and barn. So it meets the frontage requirements and it meets the acreage requirements. So it would be a classic A&R. Any questions for Rich?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the A&R as depicted in this plan submitted by Richard and Joan Corza, June 5th, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so the motion is to accept the A&R on the plat plan as submitted. And the plat plan is dated May 15th and was submitted on June 5th. Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. So you're all set. We're going to sign these over the next day or so.
Yeah.
So you'll have to come by to pick them up for recording, okay?
Will you call me, Wilma?
Okay.
Because I bring those to Northampton.
Right.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Richie.
That's it. Thank you.
All right, Ian and Michelle. Easy, Nick. Here you go, Wilma. Why don't you hold on to the Mylar so it doesn't get scratched up?
So we are looking for approval, A&R for these two lots, lots 2 and 3.
No. He's over here.
And actually, it includes, the A&R would also include Lot 1, because that doesn't exist right now. So it's actually an A&R for all 3 lots. So this is the plan that was presented to us at our last meeting in an informational session that creates the 3 lots off of North Hatfield Road in conjunction with the ultimate protection of the 21.8 acres of the Slawowski farm. So when we saw this at the informational meeting, we discussed that eventually there'll be a proposal for a common driveway for the 3 lots, at which time,
Right there.
during that special permit discussion, we will, as we discussed at our last meeting, condition these parcels to not have any vehicle access or construction on the parcels, the portions of the parcels that are on Straits Road. So, does anyone have any questions of Ian? You were at this meeting, Jimmy, but as an attendee as
Right.
opposed to a board member.
Right. So the driveway comes in here off of North Hatfield Road?
The proposed driveway
Eventually.
Okay, and it's be a common driveway for the 3 houses?
Yeah.
And what's all this stuff?
This is actually just to grab the frontage
Oh,
on
okay,
Straits Road.
okay, I see.
And that's where we will condition it, that there'll be no vehicle access or use or any building whatsoever on the Straits Road
From
portion.
here to there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the rest of that big parcel, Jimmy, is what will be protected with the conservation easement.
Okay.
So do I have a motion to approve the A&R as proposed for we have, all of them have the necessary acreage. In fact, they're a little bigger than they need to be for this zone, and the necessary frontage with the portions off of Straits Road.
I'll make a motion to approve the A&R for this plot plan submitted by Mr. Modesto and
It does have a
Concerning-
stamp on it. Is it dated?
yeah,
It doesn't-
Daniel
Yeah,
Stas.
okay.
I guess whatever the date is on it.
Well, we can say as of June 5th.
As of June 5th, 2019.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table to accept the A&R for this plat plan as of June 5th. And it's Daniel Stas, engineer or surveyor.
And that includes the specified condition.
So they're going to have to come back in for the common driveway as a special permit. We'll condition it during that process.
Okay.
Yeah. So motion's on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. So we'll do the same thing. We have to sign these. So you're going to leave these with Wilma, and she'll let you know when you can pick them up. All right. Thank you
Here, I
very
got
much.
one more, Bob.
Okay.
And he's taking the special permit with the site plan. This is a site plan, so just a special permit.
Right, for the common driveway. And you should talk with Wilma as soon as you can about getting that on our next hearing schedule. And whatever is necessary to do that. Okay, good night. Donnie? Wilma.
So we have for Brandon, he owns 2 lots on Linseed, and he needs to move a property line between the 2 of them.
Pass this down. You want to work with one so you're not upside down, Don? You want to work with one so you're not upside down? Yeah, okay.
I've been upside down my whole life.
Yeah. So can you let us know what the current conditions are?
So the current conditions are if the dotted line right there, that's what it currently is. And you'll see where that new bold line that goes from there to there. So it's removing that. This was the existing.
Excuse me, Bob, could I,
Oh,
I have no idea what's going on here. Can you
Yeah.
explain this?
yeah, so, well, that's what he's about to do. He's explaining it now. So this is on Linseed Road. So he's explaining where we're at now. So go ahead, Don.
So there's 2 lots here, Mike. There's this lot and then there's this lot.
Okay,
Currently, this lot here goes up to that pin right there.
Yeah.
And then you'll see the dotted line. That's how it is existing. He is extending the pin from here, from there, so changing this from that, changing this all the way here. So making this lot slightly larger and that lot slightly smaller.
that's it.
And that's it.
So
You know,
these are pre-existing lots.
Yes.
And so the new lot size of this Lot A does not change at all.
Yes, it does. It gets slightly
I guess
smaller.
slight,
Like it
and
gets
so
closer.
but it'll be
Taking
7.5 acres.
Correct.
It'll be 7.5
It
acres.
was almost 8.5 before.
And then this one is going to go from 106,000 square feet to 150,000 square
Correct.
feet.
Because you're adding.
Because you're adding this back here.
Right.
And these were 2 pre-existing lots, so actually the changes are on the internal portion
Yes.
of this.
Yep, no change in frontage.
Can you show us on this, just show us on this map too?
So this is
Yep.
1 lot, this is the second lot. This went like this.
Oh,
for
okay, so this was cut off,
Right,
right?
so cutting that off and extending from
Okay.
that existing pin all the way
Okay,
here.
and that increases it 43,000 square feet.
Exactly,
Okay, and this one basically is almost the same.
a little bit smaller by an acre.
Okay.
This is in the, this is along Linseed Road, and so this is outlying residential, so this is 65,000 square foot lots. These are pre-existing lots, they date back a pretty long time, actually.
These were made, I believe these were put together in '74.
So so we're not changing anything on Linseed Road, we're just changing this area in the back. And in this case, making this one lot almost double what is required. And then this one is well more than that, and they can't be subdivided any further because they don't have any, they wouldn't have necessary frontage to be able to do that.
Yeah, okay,
So,
all right.
seems like almost a bookkeeping item at this point.
Well, it's really for the logistics of the way, when he eventually builds on the lot, the way he wants the lot to sit, and with the way the house will be, and the septic and the well and all of that.
So this lot gets its frontage, or not its frontage, but it's accessed directly from Linseed Road?
On the common driveway right here, you'll see that there's a
Oh,
perpetual
yeah,
right-of-way
okay.
right there.
Yeah, this was a driveway that was put in and approved long before we had our common driveway bylaw.
Yeah.
Because
And he also thought, I mean, you can also put one in here too, and still use the utility that's on there as well, because he borders, he abuts that as well, so.
okay.
Are there any houses here? There's no houses,
No.
nothing here.
So that house that was foreclosed on is back up in?
That is this property here.
Okay, all right. And that's since been purchased, right?
No, not that one, this one here.
And that's since been
Yes.
purchased?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Which one?
Bennett,
Second one.
okay,
Yeah, that one there. That
Okay.
one actually was just purchased as well, but.
okay. So, do I have a motion to approve the A&R as presented in this subdivision plat plan? Which, do we have a stamp on this? Yes, we do. Okay.
I'll make a motion that we accept the A&R as presented on this plat plan.
Dated June 3rd, 2019.
Dated June 3rd, 2019.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay. Motion's on the table, and is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
So same thing, we're going to have to sign these, and Wilma will let you know when you can come and get them, and then you can record.
Great. Thank you.
All right. All right, well, thank you, everyone, for accommodating that. I appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to open,
Before you get started, there's an overflow in the hallway, so I don't know if we can get more chairs or.
I don't know where we would get more chairs. This is, okay, so can we arrange for some people to just move a little bit so they can get in? Okay, so we're going to resume now, and I apologize for the fact that there aren't enough chairs, but we'll see what we can do with some from the basement. So we are going to open the hearing now. We do have some ground rules for public hearings. I'm going to open the public hearing, and I will read the actual notice that was posted. We will then provide the applicant or their representative the opportunity to describe the project in detail. The board may, at that point, ask for questions for clarification as we're going through that presentation. After they're done, I will ask any supporters in the room and to be actually recognized if they wish to do so. And if they have any questions that they would like to actually pose to the applicant, they would make those through the board. We don't want to have a whole lot of dialogue necessarily going back and forth. We'd like to control the conversation in terms of just for time and allowing everyone an opportunity to speak who wishes to. We'll then entertain input and comments from opponents of the project, and again, the same will be true. Throughout this entire process, the board may ask questions of the applicant as well as the folks who are asking the questions or raising the issues, for clarification or to better understand their position. And then the board will then take time to discuss the project with supporters, opponents, or the applicant. And then at some point, we will close the public hearing. We may not necessarily have a resolution at that point. The board will deliberate during that time after the public hearing is closed. At that point, the only interaction between the board and the applicants and the folks in the audience is if we initiate it. And then upon that completion of that deliberation, the chair will seek a motion, myself will seek a motion to either approve the project with or without conditions, to reject the project, or to continue the hearing to a future date with instructions to the applicant if certain issues have come up and that were raised that we want more information on, or want them to go back to the drawing board or whatever. And we would then continue the public hearing in all likelihood, to the next available date for the planning board. I do want to, before we start, and knowing the sensitivity of this particular issue, and there's a lot of people here, I'm assuming that many of you are here because you have concerns about the project. In the interest of time, I would love to be able to allow everyone to speak, but what I want to make sure is that every issue is raised. So if an issue is raised and you have the same concern, you could either raise your hand and let us know that you have that same concern, or if there's some nuance to it. But what I hope is that someone doesn't just get up and say the same thing all over again. If the issue is on the table and we know it's there, we can, in the interest of time, we can move on. The other thing I want to make sure clear is that we are here tonight to consider this particular project on this particular location. We are not here to debate whether or not the sale, manufacturing, or cultivation of marijuana is legal in the state of Massachusetts. That ship has sailed. We are also not here to debate whether the sale, manufacturing, or cultivation of marijuana can occur in Hatfield. That ship has also sailed. The question is whether or not this type of project should happen on this location. So again, please, when we get to the question and answer period, some of you may have very deep feelings about marijuana cultivation and growing and use, which is fine, but that's not the subject of this particular hearing. Okay, so with that, I'm going to read the notice. The Planning Board of Town of Hatfield will hold a public hearing on June 5th, 2019 at 6:30 in the Hatfield Town Hall, 59 Main Street. The applicant, Stephen Herbert, CEO of Urban Grown Inc., is seeking a special permit with site plan approval from the Planning Board pursuant to Section 7B-4, subsection D of our zoning bylaws at 55 Depot Road, owned by John Robleski Estate, pending sale to Stephen Herbert, Michael Herbert, and Joe Sykowski of South Deerfield, Massachusetts. The parcel is Assessor's Map 205, Lot 29 and 30. Zone rural residential, the proposed project for cannabis cultivation in greenhouses, hoop houses, and outdoors, mostly grown during normal growing season of April to October, and with light deprivation blackout systems in off-season. Tobacco barn on the property will be used for drying cannabis, as with tobacco, and to house the security system hardware. Land not used for cannabis cultivation will be available for general farming, vegetable production, in accordance with 3.0 use regulations, again from our bylaws 3.11 and 3.12 of the town bylaw. The complete application was available. So with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Herbert or his representative to make a presentation and overview of the project. Thank you. Yes.
Just as a point of order, I would ask that we suspend this hearing because frankly, the application has errors on it. So it indicates that it's not in a floodplain overreach. It's not designated on the application. And further, there's a requirement by the Cannabis Control Commission that there be a community outreach meeting. And there are very specific regulations about that outreach meeting, which includes mailing notice to the abutters within 7 days of the meeting. And that didn't transpire. So
can I think that those are issues that are well worth raising, but I'd like to have the project at least presented so we know what the parameters are for the project, because whether we do it tonight or we end up doing it on July 10th, we're going to do it, we're going to hear what the project is. And then these deficiencies can be identified and those can be addressed in perhaps a continuation of the public hearing.
and that's
Yeah,
fine,
yeah.
but I just wanted to put it on
Yeah.
record that there are errors.
So the other thing that you should know is that there are parallel tracks that are going on. The Planning Board discussion, Cannabis Control Commission's requirements, including that community meeting that you referred to, which don't necessarily one has to happen before the other, but it does have to happen as part of the Cannabis Control Commission application. And then also discussions with the Select Board over a cooperative agreement. So I'd like to at least have the project presented as proposed, and we'll identify what those deficiencies are. Thank you. Steve?
I think you have copies of this if you.
We do. And then, Steve, if you can speak in a way that you can sort of address both us and the audience, and then John will just make sure that you're...
Actually, I'm Stephen Herbert. I work at UMass.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Herbert. I am the Chief Operating Officer of Urban Grown Inc., currently living in Holyoke, but will be moving to Hatfield shortly. So I will go through this PowerPoint as a kind of a...
And Joe as well.
Absolutely. This is Joe.
Joe Sykowski, farmer.
Is there
it possible to move the screen just a little bit?
Yeah, actually, since we have this, you can move the screen a little bit, and we can, just let us know when you're changing the slide. How's that? Is that better? Okay, all right. Huh? Yeah, John, you okay with that? Okay, all right, okay, good, okay.
Okay, so the proposed site of cannabis cultivation and cultivation only, though there will be no retail, manufacturing, or any dispensing occurring at the site, strictly growing, will be 55 Depot Road in the town of Hatfield. Currently, we have a provisional license that we have received permission to apply to the Cannabis Control Commission to transfer to the town of Hatfield. We received confirmation from Sean Collins, the Executive Director of the Cannabis Control Commission in Boston last week, that that would be allowed. So therefore, obviously, we've gone through quite a lot of steps than we would have if we were just starting. So we do have an active provisional license that's been approved. Our markets generally are, well, will be priority medical, but also adult use. The CCC does not differentiate. However, our passion is to prioritize medical, over the adult use for sure. Though, as I said, there will be no sales or dispensing on site to consumers or any type of activities, so on and so forth. The CCC absolutely prohibits us having any type of events, signage, advertising, any type of thing like that, period. We must be 500 feet from a school, which we are. And we have very strict requirements to secure the site, what they refer to as the limited access area, which is where the cultivation occurs, with video surveillance and prevent diversion to the public, especially those under 21. I will note that I have met with the Hatfield Police Chief extensively. He has given his approval to our security plan, as has the state of Massachusetts CCC.
And we have a letter from the police chief, was submitted to the planning board to that effect.
Okay. We will primarily be growing on season. Obviously, it's a lot more feasible not to have to heat during that season. That'll be the priority. However, we do want to operate year-round. So in doing that, we would have to use supplemental lighting. Therefore, that's a concern that we do not want to pollute the neighborhood with light pollution. We already know that's an issue with, other farming areas, Hadley, Hatfield, Whately, et cetera, Deerfield. So what I'll explain with the blackout system essentially allows us to do two things. It allows us to control the light period for the plants, so we create more seasons for us to be able to have cycles, if you will. Also, deploying the blackout at night, if we need supplemental light, will completely contain any light pollution from going outside the greenhouse. So that, to us, completely solves that concern that I know is certainly one that would come up. Here's an example of it. You can see the curtains are not deployed on the left photo. The right photo, they're partially. And then at night, this is how it would look fully. No light can escape. So the property does have wetlands on it. We have had an expert assess the site and do tests for soil to determine a line of delineation from wetlands to non-wetlands. It's Dr. Mickey Spokas from Howard Labs in Hatfield. And that was at the request of the Conservation Commission in order to determine what our setback had to be per local and state Wetlands Protection Act issues.
And you have a Conservation Commission determination on that? Wilma, they have been before the Conservation Commission?
Not yet to that point.
Okay.
Yes,
We've been meeting with them.
yes, we've got it flagged by Dr. Spokas, and so therefore we are going to invite them to come out and have a look at that and see where that line is. And measuring back from that, it'll be 100 feet that we have to have a buffer.
Okay, so just so you know, we're going to, and we mentioned this at our last meeting, we're going to require that all of that is done before we make any final determination on this project one way or the other, because
Sure.
we don't want to be spending a lot of time doing something only to find out that we need to redesign the plan.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so as required for the site plan approval and special permit, we have the contours for the property. That was provided by Dr. Timothy Randhir from UMass at the GIS lab. So those are as follows. This is a schematic of the gross site. It delineates the 100-foot buffer from the wetlands where the stream is. The 4 initial greenhouses will be how we start. We would like to expand as cash flow occurs into the future, and that shows the unshaded greenhouses marked there. We will be screening for neighbors using arborvitae and fencing in order to buffer the view and to, certainly make it less, make it look a lot better and less intrusive.
So I have a question just for clarification. So you say your initial plan, and I'm assuming these are the blue ones,
Correct.
and you said 2 to 3, but there's 4 here, that's fine. But you're thinking of initially 10,000 square feet
Those would represent 10,000 square feet.
under
yeah.
those? And
Yeah,
then, so
approximately.
what would be the total area if you were to actually do the entire project as you propose, or as you have here? What would be the entire amount covered or under greenhouses?
Square footage wise?
Yes.
Approximately 50,000 square feet.
Okay.
What does your current permit allow?
It allows 10,000, so we would have to, the CCC, in order to escalate to a higher permit, we have to prove that we've sold 80% of the product that we produced over the last 6 months, and then we can apply to increase that tier size.
And you would have to, any changes in the project would have to come before us.
Yes.
I just want, go ahead, Michael.
Fully scaled up, what's the number of employees that would be working there?
6 to 10.
Even with these additional greenhouses?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Initially, it would be about 2 to 3, but then as we scale it up, it could go as high as 10.
So with the first 4 greenhouses, what would your workforce be?
3 to 4, probably. 2 to 3, 3 to 4.
Okay.
Just for a frame of reference for folks in the audience, I did a little bit of analysis of my own. So your initial plan would be for 10,000 square feet. As Steph asked, thank you, that's what your license allows. You could eventually, you think or hope, would go up to 50,000 square feet. The larger of the 2 Swazlowski barns on Main Street is 52,000 square feet. The smaller one is 42,000 square feet, just to give you an estimate. Daryl and Lucinda, correct me if I'm wrong, it looked to me like your house or your cow barn looks to be about 30,000 square feet. And then the other 2 barns combined is about 25,000 square feet. Okay, so just give people a frame of reference. And then the Skoski's greenhouse complex, is anyone from the Skoski family here? But it looked to me like that's, when all is said and done, the area, which includes the space between the greenhouses, is about 50,000 square feet. So just to give you a frame of reference of some other properties that are nearby as to what 10,000 square feet looks like, what 50,000 square feet eventually looks like. So.
Yeah, and I would add 50,000 square feet is a little bit over an acre.
43,560 is it?
1.2 acres about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
And what's the size of the whole parcel again?
6 acres.
6.8 acres.
6.2.
Okay. Good to move on to the next one here. So this is just a brief schematic of our fence. It will be a chain link fence that will have a barb at the top. Again, we're going to be screening for neighbors not to look at that if that is what, will be visible. We're certainly willing to do that and happy to do that. Cameras will be mounted to survey the exterior or inside the exterior of the secure area where the greenhouses are. And that's been approved by, again, the chief and the CCC for what that incorporates. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to share intimacies of our security plan, but it has been approved by the chief and the state.
The fence, would you plan to put up the perimeter, the fence of the perimeter over what you plan to expand to, or only currently what you would be growing over the first couple of years? Or basically, would you be adding fence, or would you try and put all the fence around the perimeter at once?
We haven't fully made that decision yet. The 4 greenhouses that were in blue, we have the option of moving them down further in the field. So we might put a larger fence up than we will actually use, knowing that it'll be 1 or 2 years more than before we.
And would that prevent farming vegetables on that with
Absolutely
with a
not, no.
fence around it, or hard to get the tractor in or whatever?
Not at all. We could do it as so it wouldn't be, we can only do a maximum of 100,000 square feet, period, as a company, which is 2.25 acres. So the site's got, well over 6.5 acres. So, the balance of that will be used for vegetable cultivation, absolutely. And we'd like to work with the food bank as a, as a charitable thing and donate what's there.
So thank you, Stephanie, for bringing that up, because I was thinking about that as well. So it could be that the fence could initially be smaller, perhaps cutting off those last 3 rows, and then pushed back if you do get an additional license from CCC and wish to come in and expand.
Yeah, that's very easy to do.
Which would reduce, obviously, the amount of foliage you would need to put in as well.
Yes.
The barbed wire fence right now, or the barbed wire that you have on the fence, appears to be a straight line. Would that be the type, or would it be that circular stuff?
No, we've ruled out concertina wire, razor wire, if you will. We just don't see it necessary. I think the appearance of barb is more aesthetically pleasing, and it's more in line with normal farming and what you'd see in the area. So.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
All right, so another concern of ours, and certainly I think anybody close by is going to be odor. We are required by the state and the town of Hatfield to control our odor from being excessive past the property line. So therefore, we've identified, talking to many different greenhouse companies in the area and out of the area, that the FOGCO system is preferable. It's the most cost-effective and the most effective at accomplishing the odor control and elimination. Essentially, what it does is it injects atomized fog of the products into the air when the exhaust fans are open, and ventilating the greenhouse. Therefore, it injects it into that exhaust and neutralizes the odor to the extent that it is very minimal to non-existent.
I have a question on that. Is that
Sure.
separate? I was at the community meeting that happened,
Yep.
and you mentioned something about carbon filters. Is that separate or different?
It's different.
So you changed your...
We did, yeah. We certainly, there's a little bit of fluidity with this, but we kind of went back and talked to them even further, and it was recommended that this was really what the industry standard was going towards for greenhouses.
Is this what's known as a vaporizing system?
I believe so. Yep. It essentially creates an ozone that neutralizes.
And then, so I know that you're heavily regulated and reviewed by the Cannabis Control Commission. Do they have a preference for what type of odor controls are utilized on this?
They don't. They kind of have left it open to whatever the best industry available product is to accomplish that. To our knowledge, the indoor growers are using carbon filters more because they're completely closed loop, whereas we are not going to be airtight. We'll be almost airtight, but we're not going to quite. So we were pushed in the direction of the FOGCO because it could instantly react to any air that may be odorous being exhausted and neutralize the odor. So kind of an on-demand system versus a passive. Yep.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Okay, so again, it uses a blend of natural and biodegradable ingredients into billions of atomized droplets that attach and bind to the odor molecules in the air. It should also be noted that during the vegetative state of the plant, I don't know how many people are familiar with cannabis cultivation, there's virtually no odor. The odor occurs during the flowering where the buds form. So we anticipate limited need of use for the vegetative state, and then the flowering reproductive state, we will obviously be using it a lot more as needed. Water use, we intend to put a private well on the property. We'd obviously be working with the building inspector to accomplish whatever permitting we needed for that. The property has perked well, so we have no doubt that we'd be able to do that. Water use by cannabis plants, it varies with soil type and weather, intensity, temperature. You can imagine you never know what the weather's going to be week to week. Tall plants will need more than a gallon per day. Small plants will need much less. So during the stages of development, obviously the bigger the plant, the more water it's going to require, which is why we wanted to have our own well so that we could, certainly take care of ourselves without putting any burden on municipal water supply. We certainly are going to try to minimize any overwatering. We plan to use a dosatron with a drip irrigation, which essentially eliminates any runoff or overwatering that can occur otherwise.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are you planning on doing thousands of small plants or less large plants?
Less large plants.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely.
And the vegetable operation will utilize the irrigations, use that well as well, or will it just rely on what comes out of the sky?
Mostly out of the sky, but if we have one of the summers that we had where we got no rain, we would probably tap into a little bit of the well. Okay. So we'll have a provision that we will be able to use that well outside, access it outside the secure area as well, if need be.
2016.
Yeah. So I'll go over some of the benefits to the town of Hatfield. The tax revenue, we will be negotiating a host community agreement with the select board shortly, and we are going to offer the maximum allowed by law, which is 3% of our gross. So again, that's gross, that's not net, for 5 years. And our estimations currently for every 10,000 square feet of canopy, which refers to plants, area where plants are actively growing, $40,000 a year. And the potential goes up, obviously if we expand, which we plan to over 200,000 and up down the road.
That would be annually?
Yes, that would be annually, yes. These are conservative numbers. We certainly don't want to overpromise, but whatever it calculates to is what it comes to. We certainly...
What happens after 5 years?
Yeah, I was going to ask that question.
After 5 years, we have to renegotiate with the select board. Yep.
So the tax continues, it's just a renegotiation?
It may, yeah, we may alter it, but we still, we're going to want to pay local taxes. We're operating here, so
this is in addition to the property tax that'll be on the property. This is the cooperative agreement.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. And we have a similar cooperative agreement with the manufacturing facility on Route 5 and 10. They're at 3% of their gross. Their sales, though, are also subject to the local sales tax. You guys are not subject to that additional local sales tax. Go ahead, continue, Michael.
Certainly. So obviously, we know that, we can add some money to the general fund, whatever it does, that's the town's money to do whatever they see fit with. We certainly hope it can help the schools, the police, fire service, primarily the schools to begin with, and, any of the services that we all enjoy in town as taxpayers. We believe this is keeping the land and farming rather than subdividing it for housing. There are 2 building lots possible on the property, and certainly we would rather have a greenhouse operation growing plants than, developing the land for other uses. And certainly, traditionally, this farm did grow tobacco, is what we got for the history. I will be on site as one of the managers and obviously also an officer in the company. That will help with security, good neighbor relations as well. Certainly, if there's an issue, I'm there, knock on my door, let me know, call me. There's absolutely, I'm always open to that. And we will also sponsor and help and conduct anti-drug use education to minors in the Hatfield public school system. That's a huge thing for us. We believe that cannabis shouldn't be used by anyone under the age of 21, and that will not change. We're not allowed to advertise to the public anyways, and we would like to be as indescript as possible there, and we do not promote it. We cultivate it, and that's it. So that's going to be a big part of that too. And we can certainly reach out to the school committee and work with the principal and superintendent in order to kind of craft a program that would be a good thing for the schools. Okay, and that concludes our overview.
So actually, I have a couple questions, and maybe the board does. Let's keep them to clarification right now, and then we can open it up, because there are a couple things that I want to make sure are raised, which may be raised by someone in the audience. Can you discuss if there is a need for and how you're going to handle security lighting? You talked about the black lighting in the greenhouses, but what about security lighting around the perimeter and how that might affect the neighborhood in the area?
There is no plan for security lighting. The chief reason being it interrupts the photo period for the plants. And meeting with the chief, he did not feel that was something that we needed. And I think probably the neighbors would be happy not to have a lot of security lights around there. I can briefly say our security system has to alert local law enforcement and the officers of the company within 5 minutes of a breach. And we also will be giving Hatfield PD a live feed to any of our camera systems so that if there is something, they are able to get in their mobile terminal data system and access that before to see if it's a real threat or if it's not, and if it is, then go there. We certainly, our security is a big.
Will they have vehicle access to that?
Yes, they will. Okay. They'll have live and on their smart device, phone, tablet, and in the station.
Anyone from the police department here?
We went over that, and we're pretty confident that, state police are just, over the line from Hatfield. They will be covering that, and I believe Hatfield PD is going to inform them of that and make sure that there is a plan that if there is that, it will be brought to Northampton Control, and they will,
all of the
ring it down.
cameras will have infrared capability for night vision.
Okay, so that obviates the need for the lighting.
Exactly, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
The letter, I might as well read it so everyone has. So this is the letter we received on June 3rd from the chief, Durkashak, regarding UGI security plan. I've met with representatives of Urban Grow for the purpose of discussing their security plan for the proposed 55 Depot Road Hatfield facility. After meeting with UGI and reviewing the plan, and after some revision, I'm confident that UGI has met the security requirements for marijuana establishments as spelled out in 935 CMR 500-110 as addressed in the UGI security plan. And then he goes on to say, this is not an endorsement for or against this establishment. This correspondence should only reflect that UGI has met the security planning requirements as they relate to this office. A couple other just quick questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience. Can you talk a little bit about what you see as the traffic flow, both employees and then also deliveries, pickups, and what the hours would be?
Sure. Hours of operation will be 8 in the morning to 8 at night. I don't anticipate we probably will be actively using all of that time chunk, but that's what we want to be able to be operating at, between those hours. Delivery-wise, we have to do all of the deliveries. We are not allowed to allow any outside vendors to pick up any product. Have to do all the deliveries by law. Deliveries, we believe, would be no more than 1 to 2 times a week, and probably not even every week, the way our cycles would be. Right now, there's a scarcity of cannabis on the market, especially with independent, non-vertically integrated entities coming online now. Before it was already, existing marijuana dispensaries who converted over to adult use. They already had to have a cultivation, manufacturing, and retail facility vertically. Now, with the adult use regulations, they do not. So we anticipate, whatever we produce will be off-site very rapidly once it's ready.
And these trucks will be panel vans, or what will?
Yes, they won't be tractor trailers. They'll be a small box truck. Yep.
So, on your plan here, you do not have your parking for employees outlined, and there's no parking of these farm vehicles that's listed on here.
Sure.
Are we aware of that?
Yes. That's going to kind of be to be determined once we install the fence. We anticipate, not many vehicles there. When they're there, they're going to be there. There's not going to be coming and going. So it really would be like any other greenhouse farming operation in the area, we believe.
We need an area for people to park, your employees, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we updated that on this aerial view.
But that's not the document.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
No, it's not.
Which one is that? This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not on that one, though. It's an addendum.
In the book. In the book.
Okay.
There is sufficient room besides the barn, either in or outside the fence.
Mhm. Keep going. Okay.
I have a couple
Yeah.
of questions.
Absolutely.
So everything that you grow in Massachusetts has to be used in Massachusetts?
Yes.
And what's the current price, market price for Massachusetts marijuana?
Per pound?
Yeah.
It is wholesaling between $1,800 to $3,200 per pound. So it's a range.
What's your anticipated poundage coming out of your facility?
Per 10,000 square feet per cycle, probably 600 to 800 pounds.
Okay.
So we're going to move.
Maybe less than that. We
Yeah,
just don't
that's
know.
optimistic.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so I wanted to know about hours of delivery and the pickup traffic. Okay, I think we should move on to the next phase of the public hearing. Is there anyone here?
I just have,
Okay,
so on the security, you're not having one,
It's on site.
I will be on site. The state police, we have not spoken to them, but
You're never gonna go on vacation?
the state police, the way that they have the agreement with the town of Hatfield is they will.
so you're going to live in the house.
Correct.
Okay, actually, there was one other thing I wanted you to address, again, before we get into this. Can you just discuss how the tobacco barn is integrated into the project and will be utilized?
Absolutely. It will be included in the secure fenced area, what they refer to as limited access. We plan to use that to house our security equipment for the cameras, the motion sensors, et cetera. Also, we plan to, build secure rooms in there that will house product that's been harvested for processing. We will not be processing outside. It'll only be in the greenhouses or in the barn. For drying and for storage, again, we do not anticipate very long-term storage of any finished products, and cash on hand will be taken off-site very rapidly.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Something also mentioned at the meeting that I was at, you were talking maybe access, using Depot Road as your access to get to the barn or to the.
Yes.
Where would the parking for the employees
Excuse
be?
me, let's wait until, because that is a question that is not clear on the plan. Okay, so,
One
Yeah,
other thing, please,
okay.
Bob. I noticed on this first document, so everyone right now is registered or has residence in Hadley or Holyoke.
Correct.
So there's no opportunity in Hadley to do this project?
No, not at this time.
Joe could speak to that.
Hadley's bylaws don't allow it.
Okay,
It's just that simple.
okay.
Wish they did.
Just wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, they-
I have a question. So you guys originally were thinking of Whately,
that is correct.
and could you explain why that didn't happen?
Certainly, I have to be guarded with words. It was nothing.
Right.
It was nothing to do with what we did. We did due diligence and discovered that the property was under Chapter 12 bankruptcy, and that was not told to us for months into it. So therefore, we departed from there, and we felt very strongly we needed to own the site and not be a tenant.
Okay. That was going to be a rental?
That was going to be a lease. Yes.
Okay.
and I actually had a conversation with a member of the Whately Planning Board, and actually, that's exactly what he told me happened. Okay, so are there any supporters of the project who would like to make a comment or statement at this time? Okay. So again, we will now entertain comments from opponents of the project. I'd like all of the issues to get out on the table, as I said earlier, which may not necessarily mean that everyone gets to speak, because if you have an issue that's similar to what's already been said, it would be nice, you can just say ditto or whatever, but we don't need to sort of bring it up and up. So who wants to go first? We're going to have you, yeah, I think you're going to have to stand and come close to this microphone here and state your name and your residence, if you will. So this gentleman, and then I'll take the woman in the back. Actually, I think that mic, John, he doesn't need to lift that mic. You can just leave it like that. Yeah.
Okay. My name's Dick Wells. I live at 70 Depot Road, which is right across from the tobacco barn we're talking about here.
Okay.
My question is how long is that fence going to run? Is it going to run all the way up Route Depot Road from the tobacco barn?
Eventually, it could, yes.
I prefer it didn't. I like to wake up in the morning, look out the window, and there's always some sort of wildlife running across the road in the fields. So it's going to screw that up considerably, because they won't be able to get through the fence, hopefully, for your sake. That's my question.
I'm just trying to bring this up so you could see, the fence does not go right down to the stream.
It doesn't?
It does not.
No, we can't because of the wetlands restriction.
Yeah.
So it'll
Well,
be
it's
100.
set back from the wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
And
Where does
so,
it stop?
It stops at 100 feet from the wetlands.
at least 100 feet,
No,
but it
no.
may be more.
Yep.
So there's going to be a big area, as you see there, where it says 100 feet plus, that any wildlife can get through.
But it is going to go all the way from the tobacco barn up to your 100 feet that you have to keep away.
You can see it on,
You can see the point, actually, can you point out the point
black
here,
line is
Steve?
the fence.
Yeah, this is the fence here.
Okay.
But if we start with 4 greenhouses and decide not to put the fence for the whole area,
Yeah.
and even here, we left this open, we may bring the fence back as well.
Okay. The house is right across the street. That I'm
And is that parcel,
Right in the middle.
Yeah.
is that parcel bordered by Depot Road?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so, and the parcel goes as far as the stream or a little past the stream?
I can point out roughly the
Thanks.
lines.
Here's the property line here.
Sure, it goes essentially,
Well, I'm trying to figure out the impact of animals passing through part of the property.
Yeah, so
You
it
know,
goes, yeah.
How much of the property is still going to be available?
so you can see where it triangulates here. That's part of the property, and then it comes and it goes all the way to here to where you can see kind of a delineation there. It borders right through there.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I was actually going to recognize, where did she go? Oh, there you go, okay. If you,
So we should point out that Beth represents a group of at least 40 of us that got together last week.
okay, all right, okay.
So, but not in, just so it's clear, not in a legal capacity. But I have reduced my comments, which are rather lengthy.
So this document is the outcome of about 40 people.
It's the outcome of about 40 people.
Okay.
Have a copy for the applicant so they can see what you're saying, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
So, first of all, I'm going to again ask that we suspend this hearing because,
Could we have your name, please? and
oh, I'm
address?
sorry, Elizabeth Berenger, and I reside at 17 Cronin Hill Road.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to ask that we suspend this hearing because there are a number of problems in terms of the application itself. First of all, according to the Cannabis Control Commission, there's supposed to be a community outreach meeting. And that community outreach meeting did not really transpire according to the regulations of the Cannabis Control Commission. It requires that there be an attestation that the notice of the time, place, and subject matter of the meeting was mailed at least 7 calendar days prior to the community outreach meeting to abutters of the proposed property, or proposed address of the marijuana establishment, and residents within 300 feet of the property line of the petitioner as they appear on the most recent applicable tax list. The standard is very specific. I'm aware that not all of the abutters were mailed a notice. Specifically, Kathy Banis and the Van Giel family received it in their mailbox. Not as a mailed document, but a piece of paper stuck in the mailbox. That alone, pursuant to federal regulations, is a violation of a postal code, Title 18, Section 1725, that states that any person that knowingly deposits mailable matter without postage in an established letterbox shall be subject to a fine. Janet Williams received notice when a friend of hers was handed the document standing in her driveway, so the person that received the notice wasn't really the actual abutter. Nate Pitchko was hand-delivered a notice. I was given no notice at all. Russ Sinkowitz, Lori Banis, and Annie Tuzman were likewise not given any notice of the community outreach meeting. So realistically, there was no community outreach meeting. Due process requires that the regulations be followed. The whole point of due process is to protect the rights of all the people involved. Failure to comply with the CMR, which, by the way, is also part of the Cannabis Control Commission, follows that same regulation with respect to that community outreach meeting. So I would ask that you suspend the hearing. Additionally, I'll go to the application itself. The application itself, although there is an error, and I will acknowledge that I believe it was the town's error, but the application, on the first page of the application, under number 1, where it says type of application, it identifies that it was a special permit with site plan approval that was being sought, and it indicates see section 5.3.4 and 5.4.4 in the zoning bylaws for submittal requirements. 5.3.4 doesn't exist. So if you look at your own actual regulations, it doesn't exist. Now, I think, in fairness, it's
It's 5.33 and 5.35.
correct.
Okay.
So but it's nonetheless an error. Then under number 4 on the application, where it says property location, the overlay districts, if applicable, is blank. The proposed site is in a floodplain overlay district. It's identified in the Hatfield zoning map of 2015, and the response to this section is clearly an error. Again, I'm going to ask that you suspend the hearing.
So that's fine. Can you, rather than doing this all over again, can you go through what your other issues are?
Well, there are a number of issues,
Yeah.
but again, because that application is so incredibly vague, it makes it virtually impossible to discuss this realistically or appropriately, because the application talks about a number of things that really weren't even discussed. Sure, I'll be happy to go through those. So I'm going to be going out of order here. And again, I just want to remind you all that I am not legal counsel for this group. I do happen to be an attorney by profession, and so I know this can be somewhat boring, but I think it's important. So when you look at the application itself, again, as I said, it's silent as to the fact that it's in a floodplain overlay. The proposed project indicates that there are going to be greenhouses, hoop houses, and outdoor cultivation. The Cannabis Control Commission acknowledges or indicates that hoop houses and greenhouses are considered to be outdoor growth. But this application also talks about outdoor growth. I know that when Mr. Herbert appeared before your committee in April, just as a preliminary sort of questioning period, he was asked whether he was going to be growing in the ground or in pots. He never really answered. That's never been addressed at all. Also, where is the area for this outdoor growth that differs on his first page of the application discussing the proposed site?
So that's a question for the applicant. Can you answer, can you respond to that?
If the outdoor designation for greenhouses is correct, the table of use that Hatfield has makes a distinction between greenhouses and outdoor. So we put it in as outdoor as well. We can grow in between the greenhouses during the growing season, or we can grow down beyond the greenhouses. But it still comes back to the fact how much we grow is calculated on the canopy area, and we can only grow up to 10,000 at this moment, and we have to apply for more.
What about the smell? That's not in the greenhouse.
We would use low odor strains, which do exist, and the bylaw does not stipulate that we completely eliminate odor. It's to control it to a non-hazard to life and well-being. So,
The odor smells like a skunk out here.
that's incorrect.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
Not get into proximity, focus on the chair.
Okay. So your concern about outdoor cultivation is,
Substantial.
and it's smell?
Smell, insects, a lot of concerns. I mean, at a bare minimum, you have a smell problem. And no matter what anyone says, the internet, newspapers, there are articles from every location that grows that the marijuana stinks.
Okay, so if it was entirely within greenhouses or hoop houses,
It's still going to stink because the reality is the hoop houses are plastic. And we haven't even discussed what thickness or how permeable those greenhouses are. But the plastic on the hoop houses has minuscule holes in it, which allows ventilation. And the mere fact that you're ventilating out of that building is a stink problem.
Excuse me. Do you have some scientific evidence about the smell?
I have,
Do you have any scientific evidence about the smell factor? Not what you've heard from other people, but scientific evidence about the smell factor.
well, I'm certainly happy if I'm going to be on question here, I think it's for them to prove that there is no stink factor. Because
Well,
they're the applicants.
They've mentioned that they have a mitigating system.
They don't have a mitigating system because they've talked about the mere fact, they've discussed at that monstrosity that was considered to be what they would say is the open meeting. They talked about rolling up the sides of the greenhouse. They talked about opening vents.
So have you ever been exposed to growing marijuana?
Have I been exposed?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No, I have not.
So, and probably very few people here have. So I'm interested to see what the evidence is that this is going to be a problem.
What experience do they have?
Their experience, according to the meeting, was that one of them grew some plants outside.
I've grown plants outside, and they don't smell.
Well, I can't conceive that you've grown 10,000 square feet of
Okay,
plants.
certainly not.
So neither, we don't have a expert on our board, and you've acknowledged that you're not an expert on this either.
Correct.
We can actually have a third party review their proposal for handling smell. And
Doesn't smell, why would they need a mitigating system? Right.
well,
And why isn't the mitigating system,
I'm sorry, what?
Bob?
why isn't the mitigating system gonna run all the time? The smell is gonna be there all the time. And I take objection to Jimmy's.
So I'm going to ask the applicant to respond to this.
We said that our mitigating system is to be used at the time that smells are emitted from the greenhouse through the ventilation system. Typically, and most people, if you ask them, will agree that cannabis smells during the flowering time and not before.
Over here, you can have flowering at one time.
If
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Gary Trier on 8 Vernon Hill Road. How many flowering plants are you gonna have at one time?
The question was approximately how many flowering plants would you have at one time?
About 1,500. If I may address the chairman also, the reality is we will, as needed, respond to this, but what we are trying to do is to cultivate strains that will have no odor that would be detected from the property line anyways. That is really our goal. And the CCC says that that's what we have to do, at least not an objectionable or a high level of odor. And I do want to point out, odor is the one thing scientifically that cannot be quantified. Light can, sound can, wind can, odor cannot. It's subjective.
So we do have an issue, and to the point about if there is no odor, then why mitigate it? If this was a chicken operation or something like that, you'd have odor for sure, which wouldn't necessarily be mitigated. So we have an opportunity here to mitigate what could be an odor coming off of the property, if indeed we feel confident, and I think we're going to have a third party review it, that they have a plan that would achieve what we would hope and what would work for you all. Now, do you have other issues that you would?
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's other people that are raising their hands, so I want to make sure that we hear. Oh, okay, so about the odor, okay, go ahead.
I'm Lori from watching the past planning meeting. Oh, you can talk really loud. From watching the last planning board meeting and also being at the community outreach meeting, I believe, and I'd like you to clarify, you mentioned the odor during the flowering time could be 4 to 7 weeks, 3 to 6 weeks. And in the past, and I'd also like you to clarify, you were going to do anywhere from 3 to 4 cycles. So that could possibly be a total of 12 to 28 weeks of the year of odor. Is that true? Is that?
If there is an odor, we will control it, and speaking to experts in the field of greenhouse cultivation, we would control that, and also speaking to our colleagues out west, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, California, they have been able to do a combination of greenhouse and outdoor by selecting specific strains for outdoor that are extremely low odor, and any that may be slightly odorous, they put in the greenhouse, and they control it with the odor control system before it ever exits the greenhouse. And I would want to add as well, our greenhouses, yes, they are going to be plastic covered. They do not have small holes in them. If they did, water would come through them. They are designed to seal and hold heat, as well as prevent water from coming into the plants.
Okay, and also on the first picture, I believe, of your presentation, you did show and you did discuss at the community outreach that those are also roll-up applicable, so they can be rolled up.
Yeah, so I can address that, Mr. Chairman, if you would like. The rolling up of the sides would be for crops grown in the heat of the summer during the vegetative stage. It's not the time when they do smell, and typically if it's through the growing season, they would start to mature in September, October. It's getting cooler, you would lower those sides, the greenhouse would be contained. You do have in greenhouses, and Joe could talk to this as well, where you sometimes have double layers of plastic, which you blow air in, and if they had holes in it, the air would escape. So that is for giving like a double glaze, like you have in your windows, a double glaze in the greenhouse for heat control. And so the multiple cycles would be in the off-season, and the greenhouses would be fully closed. And they would have the blackout feature, which gives even a double system of insulation and keeping the odors within the greenhouse. And so odors should not be a problem. We have the fog system that we can use, which seems to be the best system. There is another system with charcoal canisters we can use as a backup system as well. So there's many different ways we can control the odors.
A question about the system. How does it run? Is it run by solar energy? Is it run by electrical energy? Is it a generator? Is it a gasoline generator? Or
All of the greenhouses will be electrified for the purposes of supplemental lighting at times, to operate the climate control system within the greenhouse, and to deploy the blackout curtains. These greenhouse systems are as close to being as close to being able to accomplish what true indoor growers do, say in a warehouse or an old mill, in a greenhouse, while using the vast majority of your energy is the sun, instead of running grow lights year-round, which is very environmentally damaging.
so is there going to be a backup system for electrical? If there was
Yes,
a
we
power.
have to have an on-site generator, yes. Yep. For that and more importantly, the security system, yes. Yep.
There's also anecdotal evidence that we've seen last year, Happy Valley raised hemp, which is the same exact plant with a lower THC level, right across from the Whately Police Department, and you probably drove by it a number of times. And the only people who said they were able to smell it, even in the flowering stage, were the people who actually were working in it. This year, there's a number of hemp operations, Heritage Hemp in Northampton, and there's another one in Bernardston. So there's going to be hundreds of acres of hemp in the valley. And I actually have some hemp working with Heritage, and I've been to their facility, and they're doing clones inside the building, and they have filters, and you walk in there, you'd never know. It's amazing. You wouldn't think it was any different than a regular office building. We saw. They're gonna be putting up another facility for drying the buds to make CBD oil for the hemp in Bernardston. So, I mean, we have examples of places that have done a good job of mitigating odor and of having plants that do not make odor. The one I'm raising for heritage hemp this year is a Chardonnay variety that they call, and it's specifically to be grown in areas where I'm putting it outdoors because it doesn't make odor.
So I want to get at, the odor issue is obvious, it's out there, okay? But if they and we have a third-party engineer review their plans and discuss with other experts that they can effectively manage any odors off of the farm, it seems to me like there's other issues that you have with this.
There most certainly are other issues. And first of all, I want to remind the planning board that the zoning bylaws themselves state that the purpose of zoning bylaws is to promote and regulate the use of land, buildings, and structures to the full extent of the independent constitutional powers of cities and towns, and to protect, and I highlight, the health, safety, and general welfare of Hatfield's present and future inhabitants. It's incumbent upon the the planning board to uphold the bylaws. The bylaws are replete.
What's the health, what are the issues?
So the bylaws are replete with what the purpose of the
Zoning.
zoning bylaw 5.11 talks about special site permits, and it says that the purpose of this section is to provide a comprehensive review procedure for projects which may have significant impact on the town of Hatfield, to minimize the impacts of such developments, and to ensure compliance with the following goals of the town: to protect the rural character, aesthetic qualities, natural, environmental, and historic features, and property values of the neighboring properties in town.
If I may, so if, on the subject of property values, assuming that they can handle any odor issues, is it the fence?
Oh, it is the fence, and I just addressing
Because these
that-
are greenhouses. I
Right.
mean, they're, to the casual person driving past these, this could look like, so please, without the, what? No, I'm asking, so it's the fence.
Yes,
Yeah, right,
yes.
because without the fence, you're driving past an operation that, to the casual observer, doesn't look any different than the Skoski's flower operation, correct?
Except that there's
No,
a-
that's what I said. Didn't I not say the fence? Okay.
If I may, sir.
Yeah.
3 Cronin Hill Road, Nate Pitchko. You keep referencing agricultural use. Cannabis is not considered agricultural
Yeah,
by our town bylaws.
we know, and by state law.
Yeah, and by
We know
state
that.
law. It is an industrial manufacturing procedure. We can't keep comparing it to a greenhouse. It's not a greenhouse. It's an industrial setting. It may look like a greenhouse, but it's not.
Well, it does, it is a greenhouse.
It looks like it, but are they growing agricultural goods inside there?
For the moment, under state law, cannabis is not considered an agricultural product.
I want that for the record, that it's not agriculture. We keep comparing it to greenhouses. It's not greenhouses by the law. By the law, it's an industrial building.
Well, it's not, no, by the law, it's not an industrial building either. It's still it's a greenhouse. It's not an industrial building. Yeah.
Because it's not just. Can you come to the mic, please?
Yes, and
Please state your name before you start talking, please.
My name is Janet Williams. I'm at 65 Depot Road. And in fact, it goes beyond odor. It goes to air pollution. Currently, Colorado Department of Health, Public Health and Environment is currently conducting research, which is running from October 2018 to September 2019, to quantify volatile organic compound, VOCs. These are emissions from cannabis cultivation in Colorado. According to Caitlin Urso, she is a researcher, what we know today is that the main pollutant concern is a VOC. Okay, what is a VOC and what is it? Where does it come from? This comes from the cultivation of the plant throughout the period of time, not just when it flowers and it stinks. It makes air pollution. And these pollutants, they create these terpenes. And the terpenes associate with aromatic compounds of marijuana. These odors are VOCs, which react with other types of pollution to create something called ground level ozone, which again, they pick up the fact that their fog buster actually creates ground level ozone. That's not what we want to do. I will tell you why in just a moment. Solvents used to extract marijuana concentrates. A lot of solvents in use are VOC based during extraction processes, so if they're doing any processing on the facility.
They're not doing any processing.
Okay, so we're still with the growth because you're still going to have air pollution. A certain amount will evaporate. Wherever VOCs are released into the air and exposed to sunlight, they combined with nitrogen oxide to form ground level ozone. According to the EPA, ground level ozone has been linked to a variety of health problems, particularly for children, the elderly, and people of all ages who have lung diseases such as asthma. Just how much ground level ozone is being created in areas surrounding cannabis cultivation and extraction operations is unknown. That's what they're researching now.
Okay.
What they know is it's bad, and in addition to that, the thing that's actually they're using, this fog buster thing that they're actually using, is going to create more ground level ozone.
Okay, so I'd like you to respond to that.
I am not aware of any study that any plant that is grown releases a VOC that would be qualified by the EPA, environmental, local, state, or federal at all.
That's why Colorado is doing a study right now. Also, another thing you didn't address is electricity. Do you know that to grow plants, how much electricity does it take to grow these plants? Do you have any idea?
Very minimal.
Actually, no. The actual other studies have shown that it takes about 12 times the amount of a hospital is the energy use intensity. KBTUs
Is that
per
for
square feet.
greenhouse grown cannabis?
It's basically per square feet of
But
plant.
does that reflect that the source of light is the sun as opposed to the electricity?
Yeah, I think that's,
They're talking about electricity.
Right, and
yeah,
these people are talking about sun.
that's the warehouse growing.
Right, and apparently 2% of Colorado growth is actually, their energy is basically used for cannabis
Right,
growth.
but
We're not talking about
we're
Colorado.
not talking about,
Right.
we're talking about greenhouses
No,
here
but
as
actually,
opposed to.
yes, but the thing of it is with the greenhouses is we have a lot of other things that we have to deal with. Not only do we have to deal with light, but you're going to have to deal with temperature control because these plants do not like it hot and they don't like it cold. So they're going to be having to deal with those.
So those
issues
are
as well.
those are issues that I think it's fair for you to raise them as concerns for them, but as business people, those are concerns for them to address, right?
But there are concerns for us because we have to take from the same electricity grid, and we don't want brownouts and things of that nature either.
I'd like to address a couple of
Yeah.
things. First of all, pine trees and tomato plants have terpenes too, and we're not going to outlaw pine trees. And as far as we will be the most energy efficient of any producer because the other places are done in warehouse settings where all the energy is supplied. Most of the energy we're going to get is going to be free from the sun. And I think this is a good way to do it. It's very environmentally friendly where the energy is free every day. It's the best way to do this. And I think it should be given a chance. I really do.
I think maybe it should be given a chance, but not in that location.
So, okay, so, yes, I want to be able to offer other people an opportunity to speak.
Also, quick question while we wait for somebody to
Yeah.
get up here. Do you plan on using solar or putting solar on to support some of that electricity use at all?
We have considered solar on the barn, so we don't put it on the ground.
But essentially, we are going to have grow lights in all of the greenhouses, but what they are to do is to extend the days and to, in the winter, bolster what lack of energy is in the sun. But if there is enough energy in the sun, those lights never come on for two reasons: monetary, and we don't need the extra heat from them anyways. So they are minimally used. The vast majority of our energy used for cultivating the plant, which plants need water, NPK, light, and a media, is the sun.
So, go ahead, Matt. You don't need to speak to the mic, just, it'll pick you up.
Catch you up.
Yeah.
My name is Janice Foltz. I live at 54 Depot Road. I have two questions. One, you just talked about things being blown. Are there going to be fans in these greenhouses? And how much noise do they make?
The fans will be the typical louvered fans that you would see in any other greenhouses in the area, and circulatory fans that are inside of the greenhouses.
My bedroom's right next to that. Is that going to affect my sleeping?
You should not detect any noise from that, and in fact, at night, we don't really anticipate needing to run the ventilation fans because there will be obviously far less heat.
Do you know decibels per fan? I know that was asked at the community meeting, and I would expect that you'd figured that out.
When we talked about the charcoal filter,
Oh, that was
the can fan on top of that would be down around about 60 decibels, which is not that's normal noise, background noise. So it's,
That's not what you're using now. We're asking about.
Yeah, what's now with the fan and the,
You're talking for the exterior louver ventilation fans?
very little noise.
It won't be detectable from certainly the property line, but we could certainly get a figure for you for that, absolutely.
So these are similar to, again, I know that the state does not categorize the growing of marijuana as an agricultural product, but these are similar to what you would have in a typical greenhouse, so that you would be able to easily get that
Absolutely.
decibel figures.
Yep.
Yes, we would want that.
separate from that fog machine?
Yeah, these are fans for ventilation of the greenhouses if there's too much heat.
The fog unit?
Yeah, so can you speak to the fog, the odor control unit?
Certainly. What these do is they inject the biodegradable organic odor control constituents of the atomizers into the exhaust flow. So it's not designed to control odor that's contained inside the greenhouse, if there is. It's in order to control what is emitted. So they will be used and they will be put in the fan flow in general.
and is that making any noise?
Far less than what the fan would, like a garden hose. I mean, honestly.
If you could get decibels on that.
We could, absolutely.
So this is, okay, so Stan, you had a, yes.
Jan, did you have another?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I'm sorry, you had another
I
question.
had one more, and that is, what was the main deciding factor for you to choose this specific location? Was it price? Because this is such a beautiful residential, agricultural location. To me, it is extremely upsetting, and everything, Jimmy, that I have read on the internet from Oregon, from California, from Ontario, Canada, mentions the stench, the smell of dead skunk constantly. And I just see property values going down, and I am truly, truly hoping there is another location that will fit the bill, be further away from residential places, and you'll still be able to offer your product.
So I just want to, and again, I just want to make sure that all good points. This is an 8-acre parcel?
6.8 acres.
6.8, okay. And you mentioned that there's 2 lots on it, so there's the potential for 2 lots. There's also the potential for a subdivision. So could have probably 6 houses there as well.
And
I'd rather have houses than dead sky.
One person at a time, please.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Pitchko.
Stan Pitchko, 65 Prospect Street. And I've been sitting back there listening, and I think what's most important for the board to consider is that you got to get this right. There's a lot of impassioned people out here who really, really are concerned about this, and I don't believe that they're the NIMBYs that will probably creep up eventually. I think we're dealing with people that are looking to protect themselves and have a vested interest in this community, and they've raised their families and they've supported the community. And the smells are very valid, and there's a lot of things that are very valid. I believe that some of the facts that these gentlemen have stated aren't quantifiable. I don't know how you would quantify them. When you say you only use a gallon of water, the limited reading that I've been doing, some of these larger mature plants use up to 6 gallons of water. And if you put in a well and you can't support your growing, that could actually equate into millions of gallons being used through our town system to support your operation. My understanding is that that's about 2 to 3 times more than what grapevines would use. If you want to compare it to agricultural, that's 2 to 3 times more than what grapevines would be using to run a vineyard. I think it would be prudent for the board, as I reviewed the tables and the various bylaws, it refers you over to 7, which is specifically written for the marijuana growth. And these gentlemen have addressed some of the issues, but I don't think they've addressed all of them. In the presentation here, we're looking at a layout, which is what they've probably done themselves. I would ask the board to require an engineered stamped set of drawings that specifically take into consideration the zoning bylaws in the town of Hatfield and the appropriate setbacks. I, in my limited capacity today, looked at our assessor's maps online, and I only took along this edge right here, right around in here, a 15-foot setback. But according to zoning law 7B5B, it says no marijuana retailer shall be located within 300 feet of any pre-existing residential use, and that's according to your own tables, every one.
That's a retail.
No, it's everything, even your agricultural. You go to the agricultural table and it'll reference you to 7B.5. So residential from even the farmhouse that sits on the property severely impacts the amount of buildable space on there. So if you have a 100-foot setback plus all of your 300-foot
No,
setback.
B is no marijuana retailer stand shall be located within 300 feet.
Whether licensed as a marijuana cultivator cooperative, see special regulations, section 7B.5.
Right, but 7B.5B, that 300-foot limit is on retail.
I think that when you look at the building tables, whether it's 3, 4, 5, all reference you right back to 7B.
7B, no, not 7B, 7B.5, other standards and conditions.
Right.
B, under that section is, there are other issues out here, but this one is not debatable. No marijuana retailer shall be located within 300 feet of any pre-existing residential use. This is not a retail.
I still think it would be very prudent to have a stamped engineered layout of exactly what all
Okay,
of
so
our
they do,
setbacks are.
right, that,
And building on every one of the concerns that the people have here. Now, I'm not for or against it. I'm just making sure that whatever they do, you abide by these bylaws. We have to, you have to.
well, and so they, So we will require that. They do have this site plan approval stamped plan that you've provided us. This actually is different than what you showed us tonight. So we would need to have, you would need to have this reflect what you're showing tonight.
And I think building on this, with all of the concerns that everybody has, there should be a complete written plan of operation. Everything. How many people are going to be on site, when the lights are going to be operating, when the camera's going to be on, who's going to respond to emergencies, when are you going to water, where does that water go, where is everything going to be set, what are your hours of operation, how are you going to mitigate the smell? Sitting here going, well, we're going to try this and we're going to try that, and we're mandated to make things low smell. Where is it that it's going to be written that says this does not happen?
So getting to the low smell issue is a very important one. I think the fence is a really important one. The issue of how they grow their product, I mean, Daryl, do you want someone showing up at your place to find out exactly how much you're feeding your cows on a daily basis? I mean,
Because you're talking about a farmer and you're talking about a different type of growth.
Well, but
This is a farming community that has, you know, Daryl's silage has an odor to it. Yes, we all realize that. And when the wind blows one way or another, yeah, we smell Daryl's cows. I mean, I don't think that's any falsehood in here. But this is something that people don't understand.
that's true, but to then get under the tent and understand, I mean, I'm not sure that any of us would want anybody doing that with our own businesses in terms of specifically, so how much are you watering each plant and how much light are you putting on each plant? I mean, those are issues, please. We've got lots of issues here that are external to this site in terms of smell and the visual of the fence. Let's stick to those as opposed to micromanaging.
Well, we're not trying to micromanage, Bob, but when a resident stands up and says, how are you going to control the odor?
No,
I don't want to rehash it.
No, I just said that's an issue. That's an external issue.
Right, but
What?
every one of those issues have to somehow fit into an operation.
Right, but still, I don't want us to get into, like, you know, I plant my tomato plants 6 inches apart, which I know probably isn't correct, but I don't want anybody telling me they should be 12 inches apart, right? If I want to put them 6 inches apart, right, I know. So, but he's asking about water use on individual plants and light. Let's stick with the externalities.
He brought it up. It was in his presentation, 1 gallon of water per plant. So I'm just saying that you have to quantify the facts and the details that are being brought up, and either that or you know, whatever he tells us is whatever, and that's it.
But we're dealing with the externalities, okay? So we have odor is a big issue, obviously. I've heard that more than enough. I haven't heard too many people, if there's someone here, I know that there's an issue out there. Would someone please come and talk about the fencing?
My point in coming up was not to rehash anything, other than to make sure that there's a point-by-point going through the town bylaws to make sure that.
Right, but our town bylaw doesn't go into how they actually grow their product in terms of individual.
No, I get that.
Yeah, okay,
I get
so,
that.
all right.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that we can't let them glass over anything that is substantive within.
And that our bylaws address.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
This gentleman over here had, Mr. Ryan, and then.
Order, please.
Well, I'm not totally prepared. I'm Ken Ryan. I live at 50 Cronin Hill Road.
Please, thanks.
Just to go back to this odor thing for 1 second, because you're telling me it's subjective and it can't be quantified. I'm just going to propose this. I'll go personally buy it myself, but I'll go buy a couple ounces and put it on this table here for the next meeting while everybody's in here, and then you can quantify the smell.
If for plants, that would probably be a more accurate smell.
What's that?
The plants would be a more
Plants.
accurate smell, not the finished product.
Well, that's what the flower, it comes off the finished product. It's the same smell, correct?
No.
So when you get the buds and you harvest the buds, at the time of harvest, that smell isn't the same as the stuff that's in the store.
Correct. That is cured, manicured product. It is not growing, it's dead. Ours is living.
Well, I take objection with that, because I don't believe that. But
Oh, okay. So,
the other
yeah.
thing is too, I think you mentioned, okay, I lived up in Woodstock, Vermont before I moved here, and you're talking about here because we do have state police that live in town, but the security issue is there because okay,
Let's not slander
but
people here.
let's just, you have the propensity for crime here, okay? And it's our neighborhood. We don't want people coming in and trying to break in here. How are you going to guarantee the security of it? People can break in. How are you gonna?
So let me just ask, if someone, just hypothetically, if someone were to break into this and steal a bunch of pot
Right.
plants, how does that affect you up on Cronin Hill Road?
Because it's going to start bringing other people in to do the same thing, okay? Then they're going to start targeting the houses in the area, okay? Now, on top of that, I drive by this road every day. And all I can tell you is,
Excuse me for 1 second. John just made a very important point. Because this is going to be public information on the internet, because when we post this, we need to stop talking about it's going to make it aware that that's the situation and will possibly impact it negatively. The other thing I have to say is that Right. So it might affect drunk driving. It might affect breaking into houses. It might affect a lot of other things than this. My other point is that the police chief has reviewed this. And he feels the security system and the security plan is adequate.
okay, that's his opinion.
Yeah, if that's his opinion.
I don't know if it's everybody else's opinion.
Well,
Does he live on Cronin Hill or Old Farms Road or any of these?
yeah, okay, so, do you have another comment and then we?
Yes,
yeah,
yes. The other thing is, I was saying, I drive by this road every day, and I would say 20% of the time I drive by there, especially dawn and dusk, there's wildlife coming from across this field, through this field, whether it's deer, coyote. Now we're putting up a big fence here. It's going to look terrible. It's going to detract from the whole neighborhood area.
I think it's going to be unsightly because I look out my back door.
Yeah, and who? I mean, how's that going to affect all of our property values?
Okay. Steve, and then there was someone else that had a.
Okay. But I'm willing to spend the money and bring that in here for the next meeting. If you guys,
Because it's not the same, it's the product you're buying it needs.
Who's telling you that?
I'll tell you from personal experience.
Okay, well.
I'll tell you from personal experience that it's not the same.
I'm just saying, he's telling me it's subjective, and I'm telling you it's not.
No, because the product you're bringing in is different.
I smelled marijuana plants growing. Okay, maybe exponentially it's down a notch, but it's still the same odor.
Right, but then you are also looking at a mitigation system, okay? Which we will have to have analyzed by someone who knows what they're talking about, which isn't you and it isn't me.
No, it's not, but.
Okay, so, Steve?
Guess that's it, but I'll bring that in next time.
Don't waste your money unless you want to use it yourself.
No, I don't do that anymore.
Steve Tolumpsis, 83 Depot.
Without talking into the mic.
Okay,
it'll pick you
all
up.
right. So part of the content of zoning bylaw 5.11C is to protect the, aside other articles, the aesthetic qualities. So you asked about the fence. So similar to Mr. Pitchko's point that this isn't really an agricultural product, the fence is a requirement, is that correct? Yes. So we're talking about a lot of fencing. And the mitigation of that is by way of arborvitae.
Fencing or arborvitae.
So then we'd be talking about a lot of arborvitae. It would be a very awkward placement of the largest perimeter planting of arborvitae in Western Mass.
Well, no, actually, there's...
Well, Bull Hill Road, I know.
No,
okay,
no,
well,
no,
all right.
Linseed
So
Road and RK Miles is a fairly extensive...
a fairly extensive non-neighborhood setting that I don't think is an analogous point. So, thank you.
Well,
'cause thank you.
The neighbors across the street might disagree that it's not a neighborhood, but go ahead.
Well, and then their neighbors on North Hatfield Road, before the Bardwells moved back to the homestead, Jonathan never had enforcement of any plantings with the neighboring property. So I know some of the folks who talked about who's the enforcing authority here. This would be a lot. This is a lot of arborvitae. That's I'm going to say. The other thing is that Darrell disagrees with this technical point of the stream being 100 feet. I know in '96, Massachusetts, for new construction and new developments, has a 200-foot rule. Am I incorrect on that? I have it in my hand.
We leave this discussion, which they have to confirm both with the Conservation Commission and with us, and that as if they meet the requirements of the state's stream bank requirements. So,
You should be able to respond to that.
yeah.
Yes, we have met with a wetland delineation person, and she's not even convinced that any of the area would be jurisdictional because it may be related to compacted soils in the turning round operation of a tractor. And the compaction causes ponding of the water, which then gives the graying of the soil and any iron. And the area up near the triangle, the 3 samples taken there definitely were not wetland soils.
No, but Steve is referring to the stream.
And the definition of a river protected by law is any river or stream that's naturally flowing body of water that empties throughout the year. Darrell, that's flowing throughout the year, correct? Well, I know it is, because for 25 years, I also own along that, and that flows throughout the year. So that's a question, a technical question, maybe for Concom, but is the 200 or 100 setback? My second point is, it's a lot of arborvitae. And my third point might not
No,
come
but the
over well,
100, but the 100-foot setback is from where their fence is, and the.
So we'd want to see all the way, it might be nice to see all the way to 200 to any nearest structure, which is what the law protects
Right,
stream
so,
from.
but I think right now, given the proposal for the original, the 4 greenhouses, is well over 200 feet from that stream. You can see that right there.
For the blue, yes, but that's got to be right around 200 there, so.
Right.
Okay.
So, yeah, wait, Steve.
I guess the third point, Bob, is that, there's 2 lots, so 2 houses could go in, and it's, to me, a little bitterly ironic that the planning board might bring up a subdivision. That would certainly be a non-A&R subdivision, when this is the very body that's trying to protect us from those things. So to throw the subdivision kind of specter over us during this discussion about this particular
But
development.
because it definitely is a potential, right? There's 2 A&R lots there, but that doesn't mean that that's all that would be
Your
there.
argument, you're subverting your own argument when you talk about the greenhouses as qua greenhouses. They're not in any aesthetic sense a greenhouse. They're greenhouses surrounded by a fortress of fencing and/or arborvitae. And so anybody on Cronin Hill with a level view of it is going to just see a wall of hopefully 7 feet arborvitae to cover up to the straight line barbed. That's a lot of arborvitae, and even from Donna Clark's view or my view, we'd be looking down at a lot of it. Yes, we'll see some roofs of the hoop houses, but from the Cronin Hills perspective, from Mr. Wells' perspective, it's just really a very awkward, I might even say an abomination of arborvitae. Thank you.
Mr. Pill, and actually, just so that folks know, the last speaker spoke as if we had already made up our minds. I would hope that you would give us the benefit of knowing that.
Absolutely, Mr. Wagner, I would, but we wanted to, just as you had circumscribed this discussion, it was about this development in this here and now for this neighborhood, and not about future specters. Thank you.
You covered it, the 100, 200 feet, that's for the Conservation Commission, not the Planning Board. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, there are some additional things that the board should be aware of. The cultivation and processing of medical marijuana, which was presented this evening as one of their plans, is considered manufacturing pursuant to the CMRs and the Cannabis Commission. So that is prohibited in a rural residential area pursuant to the bylaws.
So can you speak to to this nuance between medical versus?
May I speak to that?
Yeah.
Our license that we have, and if we escalate the tier to a larger canopy size, prohibits us explicitly from manufacturing products. TreeWorks, our colleagues that will be in Hatfield, have a manufacturing license. They cannot cultivate. So therefore, the extent that we can do is we can package it to go to a manufacturing. We are not manufacturing oils, shatter, waxes, or any product. We are cultivating cannabis. That is it.
Cultivating.
Let me make it clear, the law says cultivation and processing are considered to be a manufacturing use. So,
But that's something for the CCC to determine, correct?
well, by our zoning bylaws, if I'm not mistaken, manufacturing's prohibited in a rural residential area.
That's right, if it's indeed manufacturing as
Well,
opposed to wholesale.
Cultivation is considered manufacturing pursuant to the Cannabis Control Commission and the CMRs. So it is manufacturing, and that's prohibited here. Period, the end.
Go ahead.
Chairman, that is completely incorrect.
Mr. Chairman, we are.
Stop comments from the audience. Let the man speak, please.
If you refer to 935 CMR 500, it is very clear that under the adult use regulations, which is the bylaws we are complying with, that cultivation is not considered manufacturing, which is why there's a cultivation license class, there's a manufacturing, and there's a retail. Therefore, we are not manufacturing. Cultivation is growing of plants.
By their own presentation, they indicated they would be growing for medical marijuana use as well as adult use. That is manufacturing.
So we will have, that would be something that we would have to get our town council to weigh in on, so that we have an opinion from our town council. So we are, you've provided us with your.
I have, and
yeah.
I would beg the board to read this. It was what I intended to read to the board, but obviously that hasn't happened. But it hits a number of points.
Yeah, but I think in all fairness, we've given you a lot of time on the floor. We're trying to provide opportunity for other people. Well, but the other people are raising their hands, so maybe they're not part of the 40. Go ahead, ma'am.
I just have a quick question. Liz Kugler, Porter Avenue. I guess it's more a farming question. So if you're growing marijuana outside, are you using any sort of pesticides? And secondly, I read a little bit about there's mold issues. Now, if there happens to be mold, could that spread to other farms in the areas and do damage to their crops or whatever?
Mr. Chairman, I can address that. There are no pesticides allowed to be used on cannabis, marijuana. You cannot use any pesticides. The mold issue is a real issue, bud rot, and that's one of the reasons that almost all of our growing will be in greenhouses so that we can protect the buds from rain like we had last fall. That would be devastating to our growing of the crop, and so we are concerned about that. That's why we've chosen greenhouses.
But you're still going to farm also outside of them, right?
We will, people play the lottery. We might hope that we can get outside, but initially we will start, because we only can do 10,000 square feet, and we wouldn't do it outside, we would do it in greenhouses, and then we can control the rain on the crop, and we can control the odors from the crop. And so both of those issues are accomplished with the greenhouse.
And some of the things you bring up about mold and like powdery mildew, which you would probably look at and consider it a mold. When I manage my regular field crops, you look at the plantains on the ground because they'll get mold, they'll get powdery mildew before anything else. And then well, I'm going to have to start spraying my pumpkins or something because I can see powdery mildew on the little plantain weeds because that's where it shows up first.
But you can't, this gentleman just said you can't do any sort of spraying of anything.
So it's ubiquitous in the area, powdery mildews and molds in the fall. It brings down your pumpkin vines, your squash vines. It's on the weeds, it's in the things. So the way that that's managed in a setting like this is by keeping the water off the plants, because without having water actually on the surface of the plant leaves and on the buds, you're not going to be likely to get these problems. The plants will be watered through emitters by the roots, so the only part that's going to get wet is going to be the roots and not the rest of the plants. We do this on other crops. For instance, I have a friend who's putting in a float system for their tobacco plants. So when they raise their tobacco plants, the water next year is going to come underneath the plants and go up into the soil rather than being watered on top. That way he won't have any chances of getting, any kind of mildew problems on his plants or any kind of mold problems, like blue mold or whatever. So there are ways to mitigate this by keeping the moisture off the leaves. The company that grows the seed for the squash, holler seeds, they're up on a plateau in Idaho, like 1,000 feet up, where there's hardly any moisture. So the leaves are always dry, and they don't have problems with these. So we can do the same kind of thing by keeping the moisture off the leaves and off the plants and off the buds. And that's how we're going to manage the problem.
If I may say a little bit more to put the potential of outdoor plants, there are thousands of different strains of cannabis, and there are ones that are virtually impervious to rainy times that would cause these diseases, and other ones that are extremely susceptible. So that would be management on our behalf. And also, the mold spreading, there's mold in the air right now, there's mold in here. It wouldn't be a threat to spread to other places. Outside of our secure area, we do plan to farm, under right to farm, which Hatfield is a community, and we would use best methods, and I would say that the plan is to farm organically out there anyway, so.
You can use oxidate and things like that. Oxidate is basically hydrogen peroxide, the same thing that's in your toothpaste. That's a tool that would be allowed for any use.
So just one more, I kill plants, so what happens if a plant dies? How do you dispose of it?
We have to dispose of it under the 935 CMR 500. I can't refer exactly what section it is. I'd have to open the book. But we do have a operational plan the CCC has approved for our provisional license of disposing of dead or harvested plant material that we're not going to use. So we can't just throw it in a dumpster and have it dumped away. We're going to primarily compost it or bring it to a site to be put into a digester. But initially, we will shred it and compost it on site. Yep, rendering it unusable.
Thank you. Jim, yep.
Here, I'll give you a copy. I'll skip over some parts. I'll go right to the meat of it.
Thank you.
Part. Oh, oops. There you go. My name is Petros Nangil. I live on 9 Cronin Hill, right there. With a lovely view of the proposed plan. Basically, I'm just going to cite one bylaw, which says 5.11C, that Hatfield, the bylaws, to protect the rural character, aesthetics, qualities, natural, environmental, historical features, and not talked about too much is property values of the neighboring properties. Now, there's numerous studies out there that the property values will be negatively affected nearby cultivation. Not retail, cultivation specifically. So, the town has no way of guaranteeing the neighbors that our property value will not be affected. Urban Grown Inc. can guarantee us our property values will not be affected. Therefore, as the elected officials of our town representing Hatfield residents, I urge you to give your residents the benefit of the doubt in regards to the property values, because there's no way of guaranteeing our property values will remain the same.
Just speaking to that issue, Lori and David Banis had Michael Mendick, who I know you're all aware of, a local town realtor, and he came out and gave them an estimate based on the site plan proposal, and he has indicated that their property value will decrease by 30%. That is not an insignificant amount.
Was that based on the fencing?
That based on the fencing, the greenhouse, the site plan as
Greenhouses?
being able to see the tops of the greenhouses over the
The
fencing.
fence was the big part.
The
Okay,
fence was
yeah,
the big part,
in the
though.
greenhouses, I mean,
How tall are they going to be?
but the greenhouses, I believe they're 25 feet, right?
No, 18 to 20 feet.
So they're no different than, say, the Zgrodnik's greenhouse out here on Elm Street, or the Skoski. Again, no, we're not talking about the fence right now. We're talking about someone said they don't want to, someone said they didn't want to see greenhouses. I mean,
No, what I said.
I mean, someone could come in here tomorrow and put in a farming operation with 5 or 6 greenhouses.
Absolutely, and I don't think that's an entirely different situation than having a substantial fence. And I'm using the word substantial because even in their own site proposal, they don't identify really how tall the fence is going to be. In their written word, they say it's 6 feet. They have a visual in there that says 5 or 6 feet. At one point, they said it was going to be 7 feet or more. Then you have the barbed wire, and according to their visual, the barbed wire is another 2 strands. In speaking to the chief of police yesterday, he indicated that the industry standard is 3 strands of barbed wire, and that was his assumption that was what was going to happen. So now we're talking about a 5 or a 6, or, well, no, not a 5, a 6 or a 7 or an 8-foot fence. If we had wanted to live next to a house of correction, we would have bought property next to the Hampshire, Franklin, or Hampden County houses of correction. There's no way to mitigate this.
Where were you folks when we were working on these bylaws?
Well, I would suggest the town doesn't exactly do a grand job of publishing this information.
No, when we discussed, in our own defense, when we discussed these bylaws, we did have the one official required hearing that the AG's office requires. But we held at least 3 meetings where this was a topic of discussion. We had some folks show up, police chief, the school superintendent, the fire chief, and others, and they were noticed at every time we had, as much as we can notice things in this community, they were noticed as well as discussed at the meeting saying, we're going to talk about the marijuana bylaws at our next meeting. I don't know how else we would be able to do that other than what we did. And we did not try and hide the fact that we were writing bylaws for marijuana establishments.
And I noticed there's a reporter in here now, which is great, but we, there's not a lot of coverage news-wise on a lot of local towns and stuff like this either, unfortunately.
So don't tell us that we tried to slip this past people.
I didn't say you tried to slip it past. I said it wasn't a substantial way of knowing that these meetings were going on.
Well, we did everything that we possibly could, other than driving around and illegally sticking pieces of paper in people's mailboxes.
Not a requirement by the town to mail out a notice of a
No,
public
it's
hearing.
not a requirement.
It's published in the Daily Hampshire Gazette, it's put on the town website, it's published outside the town office. It's like any other board in this town.
We didn't know it was coming to our neighborhood, so it didn't affect us. We
Well-
should be out in the field where you get a lot of those.
If you have such a strong, if you
Okay,
have such
so
a strong
here's-
opinion, then you should show up and have an input on what the regulations are.
So
A few months late.
So on the topic that was just your point about where it should be, Hatfield, like probably 90% of the towns in western Massachusetts, has this catch-all zone. In our case, we call it rural residential. For all intents and purposes, for us planners, it's an ag/residential zone where you have a mixture of residential uses and agricultural uses.
And
That-
this is not an agricultural.
No, just a second. We do not have areas where we can then subdivide those rural residential zones in town. So you say, oh, all of this should go out on North Hatfield Road, because that's rural residential and there aren't many houses there. When we were writing this bylaw, we weren't writing this bylaw with the idea that we were going to screw the neighbors that live on Depot Road and Cronin Hill Road. What we were concerned about was that if we decided, first of all, we have a lot of farmers who live in this town and own property in this town. Quite a bit of that land is in this rural residential zone. I mean, almost all of the farmland in Hatfield is in a rural residential zone. We have an agricultural zone, but that's down in the flats over here and up by Old Farms Path Road. Otherwise, the whole rest of the town is rural residential except outlying residential, which is all woods. So we were concerned that if we didn't allow cultivation at all in the rural residential zone, we might be taking away a business proposition for some of the farmers in this town. Because farmers grow things, and while this may, you're right, technically not be an agricultural product, it's not a whole hell of a lot different, excuse my language, from growing a tomato. So,
But they're not
well,
from town.
well, these particular, yes, they're not from Hatfield, you're right, but what if the Zgrodniks or the Bardwells were the ones with this proposal right now? Okay, so that's the issue. It's the barbed wire and the fencing.
How are you going to protect our property values?
Because of what the barbed wire and the fences.
Because of
Okay.
And the smell and the pests.
Well, wait a second. The pests. I mean, you live in an agricultural town. I mean, what?
There are a
I
myriad.
haven't seen one field that has barbed wire. I live here.
No. We're not. She just raised pests. Okay.
Pests are an issue, and there's going to be, these plants attract pests, and there's I've given you a list in the, I understand that, but there's a list of pests that are attracted to marijuana plants. I've given you a list in my
Right, okay.
presentation. If they're going to be rolling up the sides of the greenhouse or the hoop houses as they've indicated, it's a draw for insects. We already live close to the Great Pond, which
It used to be that the town used to be able to spray for mosquitoes. We have a myriad of mosquitoes in our neighborhood. We're already living with a number of pests, and now we're going to invite some more into a rural residential neighborhood that I might add is in an extraordinarily visible location.
Okay, no,
This proposition is an attractive nuisance.
We're not unfamiliar with the location. The pest issue, I'm gonna, come on out to my deck out in western Hatfield. I can't sit there for more than a half an hour talking about pests, so. Yeah, so I'm sorry, you would like to say something?
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
My name's Jessica Norton. I live at 13 Cronin Hill Road, so literally just a couple houses down. So I just have a couple security questions. You guys talked about having cameras. How many cameras do you plan on having? Or if you wanted to use this, like where would the cameras be located?
Oh, wait a minute, can we get into that?
No.
No, we are not allowed to disclose that per the police chief and CCC, so. Those cameras will be recording inside of the secure area, not outside.
Okay, can you answer is this arborvitae gonna go like all the way around or is it just right here? Can you answer that?
Strategic.
Strategic to screen neighbors that are gonna be
Okay.
looking out to them.
Can you answer if the cameras are gonna be, I'm assuming they're gonna be on the inside of the arborvitae, right?
Wait a
Yes.
second, okay, but. can I-
Yes, Mr. Pill.
Michael Pill, the problem, we're on the internet, we're on television, we're not going to tell
Okay.
people.
There's a
where
reason
ca-
that I'm asking the question.
The important thing is, the security system has been reviewed by the police chief, and the key to security is potential bad guys.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna get you, and one of the ways we're gonna get you is you're not gonna know where those cameras are, because just be assured we're gonna get you, so
I'm
we are trying
aware,
to
sorry, I'm aware. I've worked in law enforcement for over 11 years. I'm very familiar with how this process
Oh,
works.
good.
But the
Okay.
problem, as someone who lives on this road and has friends and whatnot on this road, I also don't want cameras that pan around, that might pan to us, because I'm sure you can't answer that question of whether or not these cameras pan or if they're a fixed camera. So whether or not it's going to pan and maybe see him in his pool, I have no idea. And again, we can't, I know you can't answer that, but are they going to pan? How many? If you're going to have cameras all over the place, is it going to catch anyone else out doing whatever they want to do? So that's just a concern that I have.
So, no.
Right.
Just so you can be assured,
Okay.
we're having cameras to secure the area, not to spy on the neighbors.
Okay, I'm also familiar with how cameras work, though. We can see here, but we actually can see a lot more than just here. So that's my concern, is if we're just looking at this, I'm not just looking at the panel, I can see plenty of backdrop. So then my question, does Nick and all his family, are they on display at some point in time because the camera goes higher?
I will say the whole purpose of the camera system is to have a record of a intrusion or an incident. The CCC will do that as well. Those are the only people, the police, us, and the CCC are the only ones that will have access to that unless there was a public records request, which would have to go through the courts.
Okay, and then I guess my last question on security is, again, I've been working in law enforcement for a long time. I understand, basically, I have friends that work for Northampton, the Northampton Barracks. There's any given time, and this is public knowledge, I'm not disclosing anything that they wouldn't be able to say anyway, but there's only a couple troopers on at any point in time.
I'm
And
aware
they
of that.
cover a large area, so we're just hoping that they're maybe within 5 or 10 minutes of this site in case there is an intrusion, when they may be 20 to 30 minutes away. So I'm just, again, for the security point, yes, we have state police, but that does not mean that they're not sitting like right here, that they're sitting right here rather, and able to respond to this as fast as Hatfield would be able to respond.
I would say, that's a valid point. I've worked in public safety myself for 12 years, not in law enforcement, but another sector. And I'm aware they cover Holyoke all the way up from there, which is a large area. And, there's been a lot of discussions, to my knowledge, that is a large area. However, there are mutual aid agreements with Northampton PD, with Whately PD, with Deerfield. Deerfield is 24/7, as
I don't
you're
believe so, right? Whately's not?
Whately is not.
Okay.
Greenfield. So it's that was really a discussion I had with the chief, and, you know, that, if that became, he certainly does not see that as an issue.
Okay. I would argue that people in this room see that differently, but I just wanted to say my points. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna, okay, and then and then Ms. Banis, and then we're gonna, I think, wrap this up in terms of, I think we've heard. Go ahead.
So my name is Ani Tuzman, and I'm at 60 Depot Road, almost across the street. And to add to everything that's been said, I have a personal concern. I have a son that was born with severe heart problems, an adult son who's moved back in with me, lung problems. The research I've done online has talked about people with respiratory challenges, immune compromise, who are suffering immensely when they're living in proximity to cannabis cultivation. And so I would urge the select board, the planning board, to do due diligence as much as possible to find out what the facts are, to pursue this research study, because there are people that are going to potentially be seriously impacted. And also, as others have said, I would put the responsibility on you to find a more suitable location where you're not in proximity to residences. And there's so many other possibilities, and I would urge you to look for them, but particularly I would urge our representatives to represent us as a community.
I just want to follow up on the security question. As your first apparent, you'll be on property.
That is correct.
Will you have any type of weapons on that property, personal or otherwise, that you could potentially respond if there was a serious problem? Will you have any weapons on the property?
I am not going to disclose that, and I am not the police department, so no, I am not responding to anything. I am responding in substance that I'm alerting, and I'm going to make sure law enforcement is responding to it.
But you will not run out there with any type of
Absolutely
weapon, gun,
not.
anything? There will be none on the property?
I am not
Well,
disclosing that.
it's a private,
Yeah, but as
it's a private
private
house.
business, and he is
Right.
their main person, I just don't want, if there's a serious problem, I don't want any potential of him going out there shooting up the neighborhood to save their crop. Well, it could happen. There is a quick response. If there was somebody breaking in my house, this is much larger, and this has much more potential to attract that type of behavior.
Well, actually, the gentleman behind you had his hand up. And then I'll take one more, and then we're going to wrap.
I wanted to kind of circle around to the issue of the water. Oh, Russ Sinkowitz, 22 Cronin Hill. I live just off the map up here, overlooking this area. I just want to clarify, there's some statements that were made, I'm not sure if they're on the record or not, about the stream being an intermittent seasonal that is occasionally dry. I can tell you, I drive over that stream every day to get to my house. That stream is always running with substantial water. And if you ask the town DPW about the beavers that do some work in there.
Again, that would be an issue that the Conservation Commission
This is
would
my
have. Yeah,
question.
Yeah.
So this isn't within your jurisdiction,
Yeah.
nor would the issue about whether or not using town water or sinking a well. There was a question that came up at the community meeting, was when the discussion was about medicinal marijuana use, which is now off the table, or am I?
We can, could I?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, just a yes or no.
When we grow and cultivate, we do not distinguish what is medicinal and non-medicinal. It's like having a yellow tomato or a red tomato. We don't know what the consumer is going to want. We have an idea. Of course, we're going to try to steer to that, but we plan to grow strains that will be marketable to the medical and to the adult use, prioritizing medical.
So when I asked the question and you said you would use groundwater, we had a discussion about the pesticides and chemicals that are infiltrated into the groundwater by the farmland and how that would affect or contaminate the medicinal quality of the marijuana, and you said you would put a filtration system in. I've heard nothing about a filtration system to the groundwater.
We will have the groundwater tested per the CCC. It has to be tested biannually. And let's not forget, any of our product is required before it can be conveyed to a product manufacturer or a retailer to be third-party tested for pesticides, heavy metals, mycotoxins, so your molds, mildews, hydrocarbons. That's not for us because we're not using hydrocarbons as some product manufacturers may do that to do distillates. So there are many, many intricacies that are worked into the system to protect not only medical, but also adult use as well.
And so this is a Conservation Commission issue that would be rectified, or does this
On
fall under
the distance from the stream would be Conservation Commission.
Okay.
Their requirements on the groundwater, I mean, if you're concerned about the groundwater that they're going to put on their plants, I hope you're not drinking that same groundwater.
I'm concerned that when the groundwater either is contaminated, or the next question would be, who's done a study to find out if there's substantial groundwater that you can draw up out of the aquifer or whatever is
We've done a
underneath
perk
it,
test.
without having to then go, oh, we have a hardship now, we're gonna go on town water, and our water pressure's already pretty low, which is a detrimental issue to our neighborhood, which I think falls in the planning boards.
Right. Yeah,
There's no proof about whether there's substantial groundwater or not to do it. I would like that question answered.
Okay.
As I think 2 other issues came up about having competent technical authority to research some things and give the planning board answers.
Right.
The distance, the stream, that's one issue. Now I forgot the other one, but I think it's important that the plan that you presented were 2 fellow professors from UMass study on the GIS mapping and the wetland issue. Is that correct?
Yeah, the person who did the contours
Yeah.
is a GIS expert.
Okay.
It would have taken me weeks to do that.
Oh, no.
But he did it quickly because he knows that.
And the
Anybody can download the software, but you've got to know how to use it.
And I thought I heard someone say there's a conflict between what's on file with the city, with the town, and what you presented. Was that right or wrong?
100 feet versus 200 feet?
Okay, well, these are things that need
Well,
to be
that's, yeah,
clarified.
and that's, yes, exactly, absolutely. So, go ahead, Mr.
That was,
Fishko. Thank you.
okay.
Bob indicated that that would get checked out.
Yeah, but, yeah,
Okay, I was just trying to be sure, when does this then happen, that we have the answers?
I would say that it's going to happen before anything proceeds, that's for sure.
Just 2 quick things. One is there an exit strategy if something doesn't work out and the plants don't grow? What's the exit strategy out of there in 2 to 3 years? What's going to be left on the property? What's going to be removed? That kind of thing.
so these are not permanent greenhouses, right? These are your classic hoop houses?
Correct.
So you're actually growing, there's no concrete under, there's just like the hoop houses that USDA puts on
The
farms
ones
all
that
over.
are shot 4 feet down with the, I'm just making sure.
Yes, yes,
Just so that way there's not land if it doesn't work out. My next question, I'm sorry.
I can answer that for you. The CCC has required us to have a bond that is issued and they hold on to for decommissioning of the site at the point that we no longer operate. So that money's there to do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
So before you, excuse me, can you ask the people that are talking in the hallway to move down to the lobby?
The last question I asked is of the planning board. We talked about the aesthetics and how it looks and everything else, and I think it would be great if we could get a couple renditions of pictures of how many arborvitaes, exact counts of, because my view is right here. I got nice views. To see what I'm going to be looking at in the future, if possible, not only at mature state, but at infancy state as well. So that way I know what I'm going to see this year, because the trees aren't going to grow overnight, right? But I think it would be beneficial for the community to not see it just from my view, but from all 4 sides. Because I know that was an issue we had with the solar panels in your backyard.
Yep, no
right?
question. Yep.
So, and I would ask that would be one of the requirements. And that, my last one, I'm sorry, is who enforces or determines what is an obnoxious smell? Or what is a violation?
Well, that's a good question. I think that obviously it could be that you're smelling something and it's not coming from here, but you're going to blame it on this, you know? I mean, that could happen too.
And absolutely, that's what I'm getting at is, how do we validate? Who's going to keep
Yeah.
up, and what are the fines?
Right.
If that smell is it $1,000 per day? is a slap on the wrist. I mean, that's, honestly, no one learns from a slap on the wrist.
So-
You gotta hit in the pocket.
So I'm going to, actually, I would like to ask, perhaps Mr. Pill, if you are familiar with the CCC requirements or regulations regarding any violations of CCC. Yeah.
There is a review process, and there is a team that responds. They also respond to spot checks to unannounced randomly in order to assure compliance and to continue that. We certainly, we're happy to have them come anytime because we want to run this, absolutely as to the T of the regulations, because otherwise we've invested a lot of time, a lot of money into something to jeopardize our license. We're not going to do that. Like any prudent business person would not jeopardize that.
And they do have a website, and I believe it's clear, there's contact information on there. So if anybody wants to complain about anything to them, you can do that.
The question is, what happens when you call and complain?
Well, you would call the building inspector would be, the building inspector is our zoning enforcement agent in the town.
Okay, and has he been trained properly on
Well,
what
he's-
smells are and whatever?
Well,
I'm just asking for personal knowledge.
he's trained on filing complaints and then
I don't know if he's an expert on smells.
he's probably not an expert on smells, but so I'm going to close the hearing at this point.
I just have one quick question specifically about the special permit.
Okay. Okay.
Stephanie Moynihan, 18 North Hatfield Road. I just have a question. I know that to do this, you need to get the special permit for this. I just want to make sure that the special permit is not transferable, like if they decide to sell their operation as it is, because they can make a boatload of money doing that, that then whoever, a big corporation, whoever wants to come in and buy it will get to just pick up right where they left off.
So we typically require that anybody, when a property is sold, that the new owner has to come in to get the special permit updated.
Okay, so it won't
they-
automatically be
Right,
transferred to them?
Right.
Okay.
But even if it were to be transferred, it would still meet whatever conditions were required in this, in terms of dealing with traffic, hours of operation, what kind of screening. It's not like they would just buy it and do whatever they want. It would be,
Right.
it would still be limited to what is allowed if we were to go forward and allow it with conditions.
Okay.
Which I'm not sure we're there yet, so.
Thank you.
So I'm going to close the hearing at this point. So at this point, the board we can deliberate to whatever extent we wish. It's 9 o'clock at this point. We may ask questions of people in the audience and of folks, of the applicants. So I'm going to start for the board's sake and for the audience sake. I've heard a number of issues that we would need to have independent corroboration on. We would still require that we get the approval, and you have the approval of the Conservation Commission, which would address the stream bank and the wetlands issues, so they would be addressing those. But then the other issues we have are, we have the police chief indicating that they have reviewed the security plan, and they are, and they've signed off on it, so to speak. That would be the kind of expert we would expect to ask that question of. So we have the issue of odors, and we would want to have a third-party review of their odor plan and mitigation plans for the odor. There would definitely be the need for, as you suggest, which of course we have required of the solar project out on, that's being considered out on Main Street, that they actually provide some artist renderings, if you will, of what the arborvitae area might look like, so that this doesn't look like a prison. We can also get Mr. Sankowitz's, we can have a third-party review of the groundwater issues. And the decibels of the fan. I mean, we can clearly do all of this. So the air pollution is yes, that would be part of, I think, part of the smell, the whole air quality issues. The property values, I mean, it's hard for us. I mean, it's an issue. But what I want to say, though, is it would seem to me, though, and I'm just speaking for myself and not for the board, it would seem to me that no matter what our answers were on any of those items that I just mentioned, and all of them might come out with flying colors, that wouldn't matter. You would all still be opposed to this project because of the fence, and whether it's a lot of arborvitaes or not. I mean, we could stick this out on North Hatfield Road and we would require screening, right?
Understood.
There'd be a lot of arborvitae just out on there'd be a lot of arborvitae someplace out on North Hatfield Road or whatever, because wherever a cultivation operation goes in Hatfield, whether it's someone who's moving into town or the Skrodniks or the Simorowskis or the Swazlowskis or the Williamses looking to diversify their farming operation because they know how to grow things, it's going to have a fence around it by CCC requirements. We can't say, you know what, we're good with that. Just put up a bunch of cameras and don't worry about it. So wherever it is, we would have to screen it. And so whether we've got 1,000 arborvitaes here or 1,000 arborvitaes out on North Hatfield Road, we're going to have arborvitaes someplace. So it's the issue, though, of the fence and how it seems to me that you've got the big issues are the smell, and related air pollution associated with that, and this fence. Well, the property values go hand in hand with the smell and the fence. Well, but the electricity, again, the electricity is, I mean, I'm not sure where the electricity, it's their cost, their bill, right?
How's it going to affect your electricity at your house? How do you, I don't understand how you're going to get a brownout because,
right, but, yeah.
CNS has to shut down during the summertime for about 3 hours, from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, because of the amount of electricity that they suck up. They can't run. They actually have to click over to generators to keep the cooling units on, because the town grid doesn't have enough, even though it's fed by 2 legs, one from Long Plain Road, one from North Hatfield Road. So it has 2 main circuit panels.
But that's a factory setting, right?
But here we have is a light deprivation operation that's potentially going to happen during the winter time, where you have heating units and all these other things that are kicking on, sucking up electricity. Same times that CNS has to shut down. The grid can't hold it.
Does CNS shut down in the winter too?
Yes.
They do?
Yeah.
Can we ask them, did you provide kilowatts and estimated usage in your plan, the plan that we got today?
We did not. I would respond to that it's minimal. Running, Joe would be able to speak.
I think they just would be more comfortable if you could just provide.
We can give an estimate, certainly.
But again, even if we get that estimate and it's, I mean, I sort of feel like we're in an old silent movie and we're running down the road and the cops are chasing us and you're just throwing barrels off the back of the truck. And so even though we take care of one barrel, there's another barrel thrown off the... So we could get good answers to all of these things and have them address the deficiencies in the plan, to the point that you can't come up with any deficiencies in the plan, but the issue is still going to be the location.
Why the hell are you putting it in the middle of a neighborhood?
And you have a neighborhood that our own zoning bylaws say that you have to protect us. You have to protect the integrity of the neighborhood. You have to protect the value of the neighborhood. You have to protect the visual appearance of the neighborhood. That's by the town's bylaws that you're required to enforce.
Don't, please, why are you lecturing me as if I'm standing here and don't know any of that? Didn't you just hear what I just said?
Because you keep saying we're throwing it back to you.
No,
and I'm
no,
just saying,
no.
there are laws and that's why they're there.
Ma'am.
It seems like you want to push it through.
No. We were asked to have, whether we could have third parties address all these things. I'm laying out, it somewhat rhetorically, that we could have third parties address all these things and come back with flying answers. But you're still, there would still be opposition to the project. Right, but not if we reject it tonight.
Right, exactly.
My question was never answered why they chose that site in the first place. What was the main deciding factor for you to choose that location over any other?
It was for sale.
I can answer that. It was probably availability.
Because there's a house on our bylaws. Price, and that's a valid reason. I'm not saying that's.
No, I think it's.
I want to know, was it the price? Or was it an ideal
John
location?
Roboleski was an
I wanna
Amherst cop. He
know.
died.
Okay, could you, yeah.
John Roboleski was an Amherst cop for many, many years, okay? He was also a pretty good businessman, and he had more than one piece of real estate, and he died. And my understanding...
No, he's not.
He is?
He's
I
not.
thought it was his estate. Okay.
He's selling it.
Then the answer is, he wanted to sell,
Right.
okay?
So the
I
house,
thought he was dead.
the property is on the market, as I'm sure all of you know, right? And it's got, it's availability. And then probably the tobacco barn, I'm thinking maybe had something to do with it. You have a building there that you could, take advantage of.
It's not under agricultural protection restrictions is another one. I mean, there are certainly reasons behind it. Money was definitely not the leading one.
It's too expensive.
Okay. We have to. I want to hear from folks.
Okay. Go ahead.
I see too many holes in this, and I would vote against this if we voted right now. There needs to be a lot of questions answered.
But it seems that even if the questions are answered, we're still going to have some underlying concerns and
That's fine.
issues on this property.
That's fine. It's their responsibility to answer our questions. And it's their responsibility to these neighbors to answer those questions. So if you want to call a vote right now,
I don't think we can because we have to get the Conservation Commission here,
Well-
determination on that.
Even with, as
The
Bob.
Board of Health, I'm not
Board
sure.
of Health issue will be whether they're allowed to drill the well or not.
And compost.
Oh, yeah, compost, that's another.
I think that although the points are valid, we only have 4 people in this room from the public, not talking about the board, that seem to be in favor of this project. We have our town of Hatfield that enjoys farmland, enjoys open space. We previously tonight on the Modesto Slowoski property worked very hard to keep that open space. And I think that one of the things that we're looking at is that when you mentioned that we go back and answer the wells, all of these questions that have been discussed for the past several hours here, I still think the project, in my opinion, is not going to fit in with the character of the neighborhood. I think we can. I think that when we approve the considerations and criteria, we're not, we're not responding to our own criteria here. And I think that in my time on the planning board, we have such an overwhelming disapproval of the project. And we've had other projects in town from, one was such as simple that somebody wanted to convert a single-family house into a two-family house. And it was rejected because half the people came to it and said, well, we don't want that a two-family house. And that's been, and I know these are new members on the board, but my feeling is that the past board members have gone with the wishes of the community, and that is to reject the project. And I'm would like to make a motion that we don't waste any more time, spend any more of the taxpayers' dollars by getting several different opinions. This project has been rejected by the community, by this neighborhood. It's gonna impair their view. The first gentleman that got up, when he started talking about his beautiful view every morning and all types of wildlife, and it's been brought up. I don't know if there's any endangered species there or not, but I just don't think it fits in this rural residential neighborhood that's been here for 350 years.
So I'm going to call for a vote, but before I do so, for those of you in the audience and for in the board's defense and maybe in mine, our job is to hear out the issues, to be as impartial as possible, which means that we need to provide the applicant with the opportunity to present their case and what it is that they're proposing. They're not proposing something that our bylaws don't theoretically allow. It's whether or not it fits in this neighborhood, and that's the opportunity. I think we have given those of you here a fair amount of time to be able to raise your concerns. So, is there a motion?
I would like to, I don't know, I understand the concerns, but I'm someone who really wants to preserve open space in town, and seeing something staying in agricultural production, so to in a way, is something that I would like to try and to support. And I would be interested in hearing what they say and come back with, but that's...
It seems to me the issue, though, the underlying issue, which I was trying to raise before, is that regardless of what we get for some of these other answers, we're still going to have this fence and barbed wire.
It's too bad they have to have
And it's, I mean, because again, we can get good answers from independent individuals, and you can all argue over whether or not those are correct. But the fact of the matter is that these are greenhouses. You know, they could be growing pot as being suggested. They could be growing tomatoes. They could be growing hops. They could be growing any number of things. There used to be tobacco grown here. Tobacco in Connecticut is grown under shade cure. So it looks like, you know,
Could have been shade tobacco here. I'm not
greenhouses
sure if
all over.
anybody's here, but.
So, but the fact is that we still have this fence, which is the big, I think, the really big issue. Mr. Pill.
Yeah, I think what we'd like, first of all, is to thank all the people who've come to share their concerns, because at least now all their concerns are on the table. And I think we would like to have the opportunity to try to address them. And it certainly may be true that we might be able to address each and every concern on the merits. And if that's the case, and then there's people who still don't want it, well, okay, they're certainly entitled to their opinion. But I think you certainly have the right, for example, to hire somebody to deal with the odor issue at our expense, and that seems reasonable. And as far as the other concerns, I think what we need to do is try to see what can we do to try to make, on the one hand, compliance with the Cannabis Control Commission as aesthetically unobtrusive as we possibly can. And what we may need to do there is go talk to one or more design professionals, okay? It's certainly not a popularity contest, but I think those of you who are concerned about the neighborhood opposition, the issues need to be addressed. It's not, of course, a popularity contest, and you certainly all, are the law calls you quasi-judicial administrative decision makers. And so you may sometimes find yourselves in the awkward position of a judge where they've got a crowd outside the courthouse saying, string them up from the nearest tree, and the judge has to say, well, under the law, this person is not guilty, and they have to let them go. But I think that, basically that's it. If you want to hire somebody, I think that would be good, and we want to try to see what we can do to answer the questions and address the concerns, and hopefully that would make you all feel better about the project, and hopefully it will also help address the questions, because in my experience, and I tell people I've earned my gray hairs one at a time, there certainly seems to be some of each kind of person out here. There probably are people who will be opposed to it no matter what the merits are, but I think we also heard from a lot of people who just have good faith concerns, and hopefully we can address those concerns, and that will put their minds at ease, which is, and it's understandable. You're talking about people's houses, the biggest asset most of us own, and we want to try to address those concerns. So we'd ask you, please, if we could continue the hearing, and you all and the Heberts and Mr. Zakowski can talk about how much money you think you need them to put in. You have an escrow account, right, for peer reviews? Yeah.
We typically require that the applicant put up the money to pay for whoever and it's we choose the third party. Yeah, right, which is what, as you know, we've done with the solar project.
Right. So we hope you just continue the hearing to give us a chance, a fair chance to try to respond and address the issues.
Can I ask why, so we've had 2 hearings, like some of the approvals, do they need 2 public hearings? This is only 1 public hearing for this particular?
No, it's, if we vote to continue it, I mean, we've got one project going right now that it's into its 3rd public hearing, so.
Right, okay.
So and it could just keep going if we needed it to, but I guess I want to ask the applicants, I mean, given what you've heard tonight, and again, as I said, regardless, they could come back with tremendous flying colors with, all of these issues that have been addressed and raised. Is this the neighborhood that you want to be in? If everybody, I mean, clearly these folks are, we're not talking about, yes, there was one person who was from like North Hatfield Road and, maybe someone that was, well, Stan, you live on Prospect Street. But I think virtually everybody else that's in this room lives right around this parcel for the most part. Am I correct in that?
No, I live
Right.
a couple of miles away on Prospect Street, and I just don't want to see it there.
I'm right across the barn.
Right, but you're defeating what I'm trying to say, and that is that most of the people that are in this room are neighbors to this property. And so you would have to be living with them, working with them, being with them as neighbors. And I don't know if that's something you want to position yourselves in dealing with.
I think we can address all of the issues adequately. I honestly do. And if it comes down to being against marijuana, that's...
Nobody said that.
Except the smell. Except the smell.
Why are they only giving the town of Hatfield 3% if they're gonna make all this money?
That's legally.
That's with the legal
The
limit.
state
That's the state limit. Yes, Mr. Pill.
Okay, one thing I think that the neighbors need to think about, a realtor who obviously wants to curry favor with people who will give them listings, because that's where they make their money, and I don't fault anybody for that, right? They don't sell, they don't eat, okay? That, number one, that realtor is not a professional appraiser. Number two, I would like to know what are the comparables, because, for example, I can sit here and try to tell you the law is anything under the sun, but by God, a lawyer better have court cases, statutes, administrative regulations to cite. A realtor can tell anybody anything about, well, I think this will reduce the property values. So my challenge to the folks here is, where are the comparables? Okay? And I'd appreciate not being interrupted, sir.
Please, stop.
Okay.
Stop.
my own property with that thing there.
Sir, may I
God,
ask-
please. This is, we're not in the open hearing anymore. We've asked him a question.
Okay, and we've been silent so that we could hear all of these people and try to show them the basic courtesy of caring enough about their concerns to listen to them. And all I'm asking is that they reciprocate, okay? And I am challenging them not just to come up here and say, I think this is going to reduce my property values, but by God, I challenge that realtor or an appraiser to come up with some comparables. Where have there been properties in western Massachusetts where this has been happening, and Colorado, someplace else? And then you get into, is it a retail operation or a cultivation operation or a manufacturing operation? This is a very fact-specific inquiry. But just as I wouldn't expect you to listen to me if I sit here and say, well, the law is this with nothing to back it up, I think that certainly we have the burden of proof, and maybe that's something we need to look into too and research, and we certainly will do our best, okay, and see what we can find out in terms of, has there been actual studies and research about impact of a closed greenhouse cultivation facility on neighboring properties simply because there is a fence, recognizing that the odor issue is on us to deal with. We've got to make it clear and persuade your impartial expert that that's not an issue. So it seems to come down is a fence that, for example, anybody could put up as a matter of right for anything else, right? If I'm afraid somebody's going to steal my tomatoes or my tobacco or my cows. Where I grew up in Iowa, cattle rustling was big business, by God. People put up fences like this to protect their cows, and nobody said anything about it. So I guess what concerns me is that fence could be put up as a matter of right for any number of things, and I do want to thank the folks who kept quiet and let me talk. I appreciate them doing that. Thank you.
Mr. Psychowski.
It's been an interesting night, to say the least. If we were able to find a way, I've sat here and listened a lot, and I'm glad I did. If we could find a way to screen the fence that would be consistent with the character of Hatfield, to make it more acceptable to the neighborhood, I think it would be a worthwhile idea to follow up. I was a friend of Stan Pitchko Sr. Jim Pitchko, his son, worked for my brother and I for a number of years. Stan Pitchko ran a lot of shade tobacco farms. On an interesting side note, in 1958, the year I was born, there was 40,000 acres of tobacco in the valley. Now there's about 2,900 acres this year. But a lot of that tobacco was shade tobacco. And the valley was dotted with fields with the cloth, and it was the valley. It was good. What if we screened it like a shade field? The fence wouldn't be seen. It would look just like a shade field like Hatfield had for hundreds of years. We could make it consistent with what something might fit in a little bit better, almost historical screening, so that the wire fence wouldn't be seen at all in the neighborhood. I mean, we will do what we can do to be as helpful as possible to make something work.
And that's why I would like to at least hear, see what they come back with.
I'm in agreement with Stephanie. I think we owe it to them to get responses from the questions. We brought.
We're the residents.
Okay, I understand. This is not a you yell at us, okay? I understand your concerns, and I'm not being partial against them. I'm just saying that these people came here in good faith to listen to all of your objections. Now, they've sat and listened to all their objections, and they would like the opportunity to address them. And I think that for the time and money and effort that they've spent, and we have also spent, me just now, but the board before this, we owe it to them to give them the opportunity to clarify it. It may still not fly, and all your opposition may still weigh the day. And I'm not saying one way or the other that I think that's right or wrong. I'm just saying I think we owe them the opportunity to answer all of the questions that you came and brought up. You guys all came here for a meeting, and you had lots of questions and lots of criticisms. So those hang in the air without any conclusion right now. None. So I think that we need some type of conclusion to this with bona fide third-party verifications. That's my opinion.
So
Yes. There are studies available on properties near marijuana cultivation in Colorado and California.
But I beg to differ that we're not in Colorado. I researched some of that. That's not comparable. You're comparing apples and oranges. I read an article that in Colorado, property values have increased across the board, whether they're near a marijuana facility or not near a marijuana facility.
So wait a sec, I think, I don't disagree with virtually anything that's been said up here, whether it's Paul's comments, which were well taken, Jimmy's and Steph's. You have all raised concerns and issues. You've raised them for the most part as how are you going to deal with the odors? How are you going to deal with the groundwater issues? What's the issue related to the streams? How are you going to deal with the visual impact that this will have on the neighborhood? I think we should allow them to, if we continue the hearing, to come back, probably not at the next meeting, because it probably will take longer. You have, if you don't have it, you should get the document from, I'm sorry, your name is? Elizabeth Berenger, who put together, because I went through your plan before the meeting, and there are a number of inconsistencies there, from not only what you presented, but then what you presented to us on paper to what you have here. So those inconsistencies need to be cleaned up in terms of the height of the fence and what the fence is going to look like, the having some renderings as to what the screening might look like. If the fence does have to go all the way, I mean, why have the fence go all the way back if it doesn't need to be all the way back until such time that you actually grow your project?
And more aesthetically looking fences.
Yeah, or as Mr. Zykowski, not to suggest that this, as Jimmy said, that this would mean that it wins the vote of the day, but I've heard the need for us to review, our police chief has reviewed your security section. You definitely need to address and somehow document for us the deficiencies that were raised on your community meeting. And whether or not you've had that, if the CCC has agreed with that, that's their regulatory involvement. But we have the smell issue. We've got groundwater. If Mr. Sinkowitz is here, the issue on groundwater. There's an issue about electricity usage. So what does that really translate into? And then you've got the stream. I think the traffic, we've heard that if you can document your traffic, but in terms of this compared to a farming, a vegetable operation, it seems like it's very similar, if not less.
On 128 Depot Road, we have a lot of young children up there now, and that bad curve around there, they just roll around.
How many trucks roll by?
But we're talking about maybe one or, okay, so documenting your traffic, Well,
traffic study.
Yeah, and the parking plan would need to be updated, yes.
It's not going to have any traffic like a farm stand would have.
Okay, so, but we need to see that documented, okay? Documented, and also the parking. I mean, this is all new, but like I said, this could be the Zgrodniks or the Bardwells putting in a big vegetable operation and having a farm stand. It might have more traffic associated with it than what we have here. The traffic is a little on the lower end of the spectrum here, but we definitely want to address, you know, the fencing and what that means. If you're looking down on fencing that you don't like, that's one thing. If you're looking down on the tops of greenhouses, I mean, they're greenhouses, they're hoop houses. So that's another issue to think about. But we want to be able to address your concerns, which you've raised. Now we need them to be able to answer those. And when they come back, if it's something that you still are, you know, opposed to, you know, even with, and again, this gets to, I'm hoping that it's not just that you're opposed to the fact that they're growing marijuana. Okay.
One other point on your drawing.
Well, wait a second. You said you're not opposed to the fact that they're growing marijuana, just not in my neighborhood. Well, isn't that being opposed? What?
It's gonna hurt my views.
Well,
Anything else that would grow there that would require the fence. It's comparing apples and oranges.
Right.
The fence goes beyond.
Make it a tomato farm.
It wouldn't even be there.
I live right
well,
across the
actually,
street.
we wouldn't even be here if it was because it would be. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if I may say, if we were willing to, as a compromise, put a fence up that does not look like a security fence, that would be typical to a residential fencing, that would be aesthetically pleasing, and it would be tall enough to occlude the view of the greenhouse and operations inside while providing security, would that be something that would be?
I think we would need to see what that looks like.
We could get a rendering of that. We are not required to have barbed wire. We are required to have simply a fence that provides security. If we could have an aesthetically pleasing fence like a farm would have, that is solid, would that be something that
I don't know. I mean, I think what we need to do is you need to be able to show what those examples might look like, and if you have a range of examples, and even what Mr. Sykowski had talked about. You know, I think this gets to Steph's point. Sadly enough, views are, you know, everyone likes everybody, you know, the views that are provided by neighboring properties. But when those properties, in this case, and yes, there could be 2 houses there, there could be 6 or 8 houses there, and, you know, but, you know, so it's the issue is that, you know, everybody's view is great as long as you don't have to pay for it, right? I mean, that was sort of one of the issues that I heard about the solar farm up here on Prospect Street. I mean, someone was saying, "Oh, I like to cross-country ski out there." Well, did they ever ask the farmer if they could cross-country ski out there? But I do.
That didn't go through though, right?
It didn't go through, and one of the arguments is that, well, I like that big open space there because I like to hike there, I like to walk there. Well, did anybody ask the farmer if they could hike and walk there? I mean, you know, it's like,
That didn't go through.
That one didn't go through, but, you know, who knows what they may put up there someday. So I think that we're trying to address the issues that have been raised and clearly have been raised by the townspeople. But you have also raised questions, and I think it's only fair to allow them to answer those questions. We can have a third-party engineer review them. As I said earlier, it may not matter to all of you, but I think we owe it to them, as Jimmy indicated, to be able to respond to those. And I think it's important that your application needs to be cleaned up so that we get those deficiencies addressed. We want to see a stamped plat plan that should have the elevations right on the plat plan. Okay, they can be your GIS stuff, you can work with, are you working with Harold Eaton, or who are you working with?
Randy Iser.
Randy Iser, he can do that stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And addressing then we'll need to address we want to know what kind of groundwater you think you're going to be using and electricity. We will then have that reviewed along with the smell issue and and we need to know really the details of that. Not just that you're going to use whatever you called it, the name of the fog buster. What is it? What does it look like? So that someone can actually review that and
On a technical sheet.
technical sheet, so that can be reviewed by somebody who has technical knowledge on that subject. And then, more importantly than anything else,
I have a couple of things on that. On the plan by Mr.
Yeah.
Iser that he read. There's no delineation of the parking. You have parking out there. Our bylaws are specific to the number of employees that you're going to have, the number of parking spaces that you have. You have compost area there, but it's not delineated. To me, it looks like, a compost. Most people in this room are familiar with a compost pile, an outside pile. I don't know what the rules are for an outside marijuana pile. And how do you prevent the wind from blowing that compost around? What about a disposal for your dumpster? Where's the dumpster on here where you're going to throw your waste, your plastic pots that you're growing, or whatever kind of, maybe they're biodegradable pots. I don't know what you got to have some waste. You have to have that listed on there. But I think the parking, the dumpster, the compost area needs to be delineated, in my opinion, more than just this is going to be the compost area. What does that consist of?
and since I've heard a number of people say that they're not opposed to the growing of marijuana, and they're opposed to it being grown here, it sounds like mainly because of the impact of the fencing and what that would look like. And, well, no, I know, you raise the smell, we've talked about all that.
When they do this study, I want them to study the specific strands they're going to plant, because they can come up with a nice study with a low smell marijuana and plant a high smell marijuana.
Well, but we can hold them to what, I mean, there's going to be, but there's going to be a requirement of on the odor, right? That there's, you know, just like if this was a hog operation, we may say you can only have 300 hogs there, you know?
Or 800 chickens.
So we can, but I think we owe it to them to be able to address the questions that were legitimately raised. You guys raised a lot of legitimate questions, and then we can have a third-party reviewer review those. But the big issue, and that still may not be enough to carry the day, but the big issue is going to be the fence and the fencing and how that looks and what that's going to look like. If obviously, if you can't pass muster on the odor, then it doesn't matter what the fence looks like. But the fence seems to be a really big key issue.
I have something to say.
Yeah, and then
I have something to say. The planning board, as it sits right here, is not an adversarial board in relationship to the people that live in this town. We all live here with all of you. You're all our friends, you're all our neighbors. We're trying to do our job the best we can with the facts that we're given. Okay, we're not fighting with you people over what happens. You are our neighbors. We're looking out for this. We have to be fair to the applicant also. Whether it flies or it doesn't fly, that's to be determined. But we are not shortchanging you as our neighbors by giving them the opportunity to pursue this to the point where we have a decision.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and then Mr. Ryan, and then we got a.
Two of my other concerns around this are that you already have a provisional license. Why don't you have some of these studies already done? And why are we asking like the first time for these studies, as well as just wondering what your experience are. Have you gone and spent a grow cycle at an outdoor facility in Colorado and California, especially perhaps being a professor, knowing you're going into this, to see what are some of the issues, how are they addressing them, what is their experience? Have you actually gone and lived part of that, or is this we've read about it, and so this is what we're planning to do? This is some of my main ones, is that this is just a transfer of provisional license. So this research should have been done prior to coming to this town, because they were trying it in another town. This is not a new growing.
As we know, the other issue had to do with, and was confirmed by the Whately Planning Board. It was not necessarily about their proposal, it was their decision to move away from that property because it went into the owner who owned it went into bankruptcy. So can you address the provisional license issue?
I can. The state, in order to award a provisional license, is rigorous in us proving an operational plan, a security plan, a business plan, and everything that it takes to operate a business, or else they will not even entertain putting it to a vote in Boston. When we were awarded a provisional license, we had to get a majority vote, and we got a unanimous vote to issue that provisional license in Boston at the beginning of the year.
But your experience growing, or have you gone to a cultivation, outdoor cultivation in another state and kind of gone through a grow cycle and seen, what is your personal experience in the cannabis cultivation area?
That wasn't
as you
the-
are living on property.
That
No,
wasn't the
but for us,
criteria.
okay.
We had to demonstrate that we, in our operational and business plan, would, to their satisfaction, and subcommittees that look at this, that we would be able to properly execute the growing while complying with all the state requirements the CCC puts through. And then they will issue the license. So if they thought we would not be able to pull it off, they would not have issued it. We
But you
proved
haven't
to them.
experienced this yourself. This is your first time.
But I'm not sure that, would we be asking that question of, say, a farmer, a young farmer who just, moved up from New York City and wanted to start a farm?
Depending on what he was using, his nature.
Okay, but, all right, so.
We've had many businesses that have come to town. For example, there was a coffee shop out on Route 5, and they said, it went right next to Smithsonian there. And I specifically asked the gentleman, how is your coffee shop going to make it as opposed to that coffee shop? So, and he just said, well, I think I got a different product, and it's going to grow. So we don't get into telling people how to run their business. That's a risk, I think, that everybody takes when they want to go into a business. We don't, we just want to make sure they're complying with the rules and regulations set forth in the
And the Cannabis
zoning.
Control Commission is very rigorous in their, this is a heavily regulated industry. This isn't necessarily that they're giving these licenses out to anybody.
But is the business plan they submitted to them the same as we're seeing here? Because my biggest issue with it is I went to the other meeting, they didn't have answers, their PowerPoint didn't work, they were going to give us copies of it in paper, we left them with names and addresses, we never saw that. And then we come here tonight and everything looks different and the answers are different.
Right,
So I
so-
would have liked to have seen more consistency,
Right.
that they were
So
prepared
we,
both times with the answers.
and I think what we want to do, what I would propose is that we continue the hearing. We have the issues that you've raised, the group has raised, the issues that you, the attorney has specifically raised. If you're raising those issues because you want to ask questions, then I think they can provide answers to those. It may still not satisfy you, it may still not satisfy the board, but the questions have been raised about, again, the air pollution and odor, electricity, groundwater, the fence, as we've discussed, and to clean up your application so that it's really clear what your answers are to all of these questions. Getting the Conservation Commission's, like I said, we wouldn't have been able to act tonight anyway because we don't act until we know that the Conservation Commission is approved. Everybody in here could have said, oh yeah, this is great, can't wait to see it happen, but we would not have voted tonight because we need to get the approval of the Conservation Commission on the stream bank issue.
Could we ask for helpful input on what kind of fencing might be preferred?
Well, so that would be something that I think, well, it is and it isn't, in the sense that if they're willing to reach out to you all as neighbors and talk to you about some of these issues and find out what you're thinking of. The arborvitae around RK Miles was disparaged earlier. I will say that I sat in your spot when that project came up. And I was concerned, not that RK Miles was going in, but that those of us that live on Linseed Road would be driving down Linseed Road looking at the back of a commercial building. And what goes in the back of commercial buildings? Dumpsters and junk. And so I specifically asked that some kind of screening go up. And they said, well, we could put up arborvitae. And I said, that would be great. And you know, those arborvitaes were pretty little for the first couple of years. The other thing that we asked them to do, because again, I was opposed initially to the project, but we said, because they want to put in that big woodshed that they have.
That's the expected industrial zone area.
It's a commercial zone that faced, it's a commercial zone that was abutted a rural residential zone with lots of houses looking at the back. And so the other issue was they wanted to put in their wood storage area. And so myself and a couple neighbors said, well, could you make it look like a tobacco barn? And they said, sure, why not? So if you go now to Linseed Road and drive down Linseed Road and you look at that, you don't even see the back of RK Miles, and what you do see looks like a tobacco barn. But that was because there was dialogue between the applicant and some of the neighbors. And we worked out.
Didn't really have the rural looks and views that we do have.
Oh, well, no, wait a second. No, I beg to differ. That is one of the prettiest rural views in Hatfield. You're looking across about 10 or 15 acres of open farm ground. We're now going to have another house there.
Well, you're describing it as looking at 5 and 10.
No. When you looked at 5 and 10, it was all farmland, right out to 5 and 10 until they built RK Miles. And with these additions, it actually looks pretty nice considering we allowed for commercial development or commercial zone and that. So all I'm saying is you have raised a lot of valid issues. We're not saying they weren't valid. And for anybody to say that we somehow came in here thinking we were going to do X and Y, we were reviewing the project just like the rest of you were. You've raised some very valid issues. We're asking them to address them. Doesn't mean that when they come back in that it's all going to be, buds and roses. But we need, and then we'll have a third-party engineer review these so that we can agree, because none of us are experts on this. None of you are either, except that you spend a lot of time on the internet. So we need to look at these.
If they do a new plan, as you asked them
Yeah.
to do.
Right.
Will that also be available for viewing at the town clerk?
Absolutely.
For a
Absolutely.
certain amount of time
Yeah.
before the hearing?
Yeah, absolutely.
And when are you gonna meet on this next?
Well, so our next meeting is July 10th. My thought is that there's not enough time between now and July 10th for you to respond to all of these issues. So this hearing, if we vote to continue it, it would probably go at least to our next meeting. Now, we typically in the past have not had a meeting in August, but if we had to, we could. But it ordinarily would, because it's so difficult to do scheduling. So we would ordinarily then do it in that first week, the first Wednesday of September, which I think is actually the 10th or something like that, because Labor Day is pretty early. Can you look at that? Actually.
First Wednesday is the 7th?
No, that's August.
Okay, the first Wednesday is the 11th.
Well, no, it'd be we probably would end up doing it the 11th because the 4th is right after. I don't know. We could do it on we probably would be the 4th.
And we'll be notified as abutters again?
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
What?
I'm sorry, when a hearing is continued, we do not, I don't want them to be misled. My understanding of these is, right, they've been told now, and the meeting will be online, and they can tell all their friends, but no, there is no additional mailed or published notice.
As a result of, by state requirements.
Right, but they didn't do it right the first time.
Well, no, they did for this. You're talking about the community meeting. Yeah, they did this. This is a different process than the CCC community meeting.
Okay, so this is
Yeah.
locking in the date, you'll be locking in the date on your vote?
Well, I mean, it'd be up to you all if you think.
Second is Labor Day. So
Yes, it'd be the 4th. So it would be up to whether or not you thought, I don't think there's any way you can get all this stuff together And I would certainly encourage you to go and meet with some of the representatives of the community.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I had left with Marlene and Ms. Davis my business card and had stopped in numerous times since we submitted our application to the planning board and had said, and this was at the suggestion of the chairman of the select board, that I would be happy to field questions, concerns, comments, suggestions, either by phone, in-person meeting, email, and there was not a single attempt, to my knowledge, that anyone reached out to do that. So in fairness to us to come tonight, we have tried to be extremely transparent, and had these concerns been fielded to us, I think we could have probably come here a lot better able to address these.
Right, but now that the issues have been raised, you're in a position now to be able to address them. But I also think that you might want to, after the meeting in the hallway, meet with some of these folks. You get their numbers, they get your number, so that you can perhaps have some dialogue with them. Because if, you're assuming that this project gets approved. If that's the case, these are your neighbors.
And we did give him our names and numbers.
They have all of them.
Spoke with
Yeah.
them after the meeting. Got the contact information.
Right.
They never gave us the information we did request.
This is from that community meeting? Okay, yeah.
They didn't have
Yeah.
their PowerPoint working, so
Yeah, okay, so.
they were gonna send it.
Right, all right, so you guys have some fence building, pardon the pun, some fence mending to do. But like I said, I think as Jimmy said, we owe it to them. You've raised some very important questions. Let's let them try and answer them, and we'll see where things lie when we come back, okay? So can I get a motion to continue the hearing?
I make a motion, we continue this discussion on this marijuana issue till the next meeting, till the applicants can come back with the proper information.
Well, but I want to be able to make sure that everybody knows when that next meeting will be.
Quiet, please.
Can we say, would you be in a position to provide us with the necessary information so that we can have it reviewed by a third party for that September 4th meeting?
I think that's more than enough time.
In the meantime, get in touch with conservation and get that squared away.
Yes.
Call me on that.
Okay, so for everybody in the room, and for those of you then can tell your friends and neighbors, this meeting will be continued until September 4th.
I make a motion, we continue this meeting till September 4th, where hopefully we will get some more answers.
What time? 6:30?
6:30.
Thank you.
Okay. You have a second? Okay, is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, all right. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you for putting up with all of it.
Do you have a copy of the issues that were raised by Diane?
She gave him a copy. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, yeah, so
Hang on a second.
we need to adjourn.
Oh, okay.
We have more business to do. Yeah.
We have more business?
Do we have to do that tonight? Can we do that next time? Yeah, okay. All right. I'm going to ask, we're not quite done yet. I'm going to ask for a motion, please.
Quiet, please.
We're not quite done yet. Our meeting is still going.
Yes.
Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Oh,
No.
No, you can't adjourn.
no, we're continuing the public hearing, but what about
Continuing the public meeting.
Our meeting, yeah. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn meeting.
Yeah, can I get a second?
So move.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right. Meeting